American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 251, Azu was always hospitable to black people, so he often invited them to his home. Hearing Peter's words, Star-Lord and Clark also cast surprised eyes at Zu. The two did not expect Zu to be so bold. Isn't S.H.I.E.L.D. one of the most powerful organizations in the world? How dare Zu to mess with it? What is S.H.I.E.L.D.? Thor stood up, holding an iced beer in one hand, and asked several people in confusion. Star-Lord explained to the other party, the Strategic Homeland Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency, referred to as S.H.I.E.L.D., is a special force of the International Security Council that is specially used to deal with various strange events. I thought it was a game. Thor sat back on the sofa without interest. Compared to S.H.I.E.L.D., he was more interested in the TV show in front of him. Actually coughing, Zu explained to Peter, I made a deal with the other party. What deal? Like Thor, Zu looked at Thor. Loki asked Thor to help on the farm, and I also found someone. Peter looked at him unkindly. So the person you found is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I paid. Zu said that he was not a freeloader. Listening to Zu's defense, Peter frowned. He didn't expect that Zu was so bold. He kidnapped someone directly and openly. Why did you kidnap him? Peter asked him. I just think that as a black man, he may have a certain talent in farming. He may also know the whereabouts of the Infinity Stones. Zu added in his heart. Peter asked Zu earnestly, John, don't you know that racial nights are incorrect? Who taught you these incorrect things? Zu was stunned for a moment. Clark and Star-Lord next to him also looked at each other. Looking at Peter's serious expression, the two didn't know whether Peter really didn't know or was pretending. But considering the serious atmosphere at the scene, Star-Lord and Clark rationally remained silent. Zu opened his mouth and suddenly felt powerless. That Zu argued for a while, not knowing how to answer. Peter didn't continue to ask about this issue. He asked Zu about the whereabouts of Nick Fury. Where is he now? Peter put aside the idea of dealing with Azu, took a deep breath and asked him, where did you put Nick Fury? Seeing Peter angry, Azu said guiltily, in the nearby S.H.I.E.L.D. base. Because of the appearance of Thor's hammer, S.H.I.E.L.D. set up a base nearby. Now S.H.I.E.L.D. has completely withdrawn from the town, resulting in some temporary bases being vacant. So Azu placed the other party in the S.H.I.E.L.D. temporary base. Take me to the scene, alright, Dad. Fuck, Nick Fury, who is imprisoned in the S.H.I.E.L.D. temporary base, cursed fiercely because he couldn't escape. He didn't expect that as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., he would be kidnapped. And the other party was wearing Captain America's clothes. Can fly, super strength, super speed, radio energy. Nick Fury thought of a lady he met a long time ago. The other party also has similar abilities to this bastard called Captain Motherland. Holding the signal transmitter in his hand, he fell into deep thought. He could call the lady now, and even if she was several galaxies away, she would be able to receive the signal he transmitted. But it was obviously not worth calling her for such a small matter. He looked up and looked into the dark room. The floor of the room was covered with a waterproof cloth, and an old wooden table was placed in the middle. Walking to the middle of the room, Nick Fury took a Zippo lighter from his pocket. He flicked it open, the flame ignited, and the lighter was held under his dark face. He could clearly hear the crisp sizzling sound of the flame burning. Although he had quit smoking, what he wanted to do most now was to smoke. Maybe God heard his thoughts, and he found half a pack of cigarettes on the wooden table. Nick, who was in a good mood, took a deep puff of the cigarette, and then exhaled. 2 wisps of greasy smoke were like the pent-up breath of a conquered dragon. With a creak, the door was pushed open. Peter looked at Nick Fury smoking and was stunned. This guy actually smokes? He thought he always had a stern expression. Nick Fury didn't expect Peter to come here at this time, and he was also stunned. Ahem, he coughed and threw the cigarette on the ground. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Azu walking towards him. Looking at Azu's familiar figure, Nick Fury frowned slightly, and he felt that the other party was inexplicably familiar. Director Nick Fury, Peter asked the other party. Yes, I am. Nick Fury stared at the two people and asked, what is your purpose? You look very vigilant, Mr. Fury. Peter walked into the room, smelling the smell of smoke in the room, and while talking, he constructed runes on the wooden table. In Nick Fury's shocked eyes, A gust of wind suddenly appeared from the room, rushing out and blowing away all the smoke. Nick Fury was stunned. What kind of magic is this? Taking a deep breath to calm himself, he said to Peter, who was becoming more and more fearful, I have always been wary of others. He lifted his eye patch, revealing the other eye he had covered, and said to everyone, do you know how I became blind in this eye? It was because I trusted others too easily and was hurt by them, and as a result, I paid the price of this eye. He put on the eye patch and said to Peter, since then, I no longer trust others too easily. Very inspiring, Peter nodded. He knew that the other party was talking nonsense. The other party's eye was obviously scratched by the orange cat. But he didn't expose it directly. Forget to introduce myself, I'm Peter Patrick. Hearing Peter say his name, Nick Fury suddenly remembered the scene of the destroyer he had seen before. He took a step back and used the thin moonlight to see the other party's appearance clearly. Seeing that Peter was the mysterious man who fought against the destroyer before, his eyes flashed with surprise. It's you? Nick Fury felt his heart beat faster. It seems that Director Fury has seen me, Peter said to the other party, then we are acquaintances, so I will directly tell you my purpose. I apologize to you for my son inviting you here. While apologizing, Peter looked at Zhu. Although his purpose is to invite you to his home, such means are too rough. Peter described Zhu's behavior as a treat. Nick Fury listened to Peter's words and cast a shocked look at Zhu next to him. He didn't expect that the guy in front of him would be Captain Motherland. Are this family really monsters? My son has always been very hospitable to black people, so he often invites them to his home. Peter continued to speak without blushing or beating his heart in Nick Fury's crazy thoughts. Nick Fury? He was a little shocked at Peter's ability to lie with his eyes open. Is this hospitality to black people? Are you going to say in your next sentence that there are many things on the farm that are prepared for me? Are you right, John? Peter looked at Zhu and asked him. Zhu, who was a little confused, nodded repeatedly, yes. Where are you from? Suppressing the restlessness in his heart, Nick no longer entangled in whether the other party hired someone or kidnapped him. He asked Peter, are you the god Odin? No, I'm not the god Odin, Peter said to him, I'm just an ordinary person who came on vacation. Ordinary people? Ordinary people can't summon thunder? Nick Fury looked at Peter with a complicated expression. Now it's not only Peter who is difficult, but also the other party's sons. If the other party wants to rule the world, no one can stop them. If he successfully forms the Avengers, can he do it? Nick Fury fell into deep thought. No. Unless the lady comes in person, the chances of winning are slim. Are you going to let me go? Nick Fury pulled his thoughts out and asked Peter. He would think about the extra things outside, and now he was most concerned about his own safety. Actually, Peter was silent for a moment, and said to him, I think you can disappear for a while, which may not be a bad thing. What do you mean? You think your shield is an iron barrel, protecting the security of the country, but in fact, it has been infiltrated and riddled with holes. You never know who the real enemy you are facing is. Hearing Peter's words, Nick Fury frowned. Hydra, which has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. since World War II, has now controlled all departments, so sometimes you can see things clearly from an outsider's perspective. In a sense, John is helping you, Nick Fury. This kid kidnapped me, and I have to thank him? But he felt that what Peter said made some sense. Recently, he also noticed the lurking power of Hydra. Maybe this is really an opportunity. Nick Fury doesn't want to go back now. Disappearing for a while is also a solution. He suddenly felt that visiting Peter's farm was not so unacceptable. At the same time, Asgard. Loki pretended to be Odin and sat on the throne. At this time, he was thinking about how to move all the gods in Asgard to the World Tree on his farm. In this way, the World Tree will not be empty. He, the king, will no longer be a king without troops, but a real god of Asgard. His father also looked at him with new eyes. He must find a reason to convince these Asgardians. But how to say it so that they will not doubt him? Otherwise, he should first promote having children in Asgard, so that it will be convenient for him to immigrate in the future when the population increases. It would be best if the Asgardians can arrange for the second and third children. Loki was considering secretly immigrating here, and the guards of Asgard told him, the queen has woken up. Chapter 252 Loki, if Queen Frigga isn't an option, can I marry Hela? Hearing the news that Queen Frigga had awakened, Loki was a little confused and suddenly became nervous. You know, Queen Frigga was raised by a witch, and she would definitely recognize that he was the fake Odin at a glance. At that time, his plan could not be implemented. Moreover, once the other party knew that he had exiled Loki, she would definitely be dissatisfied with him. I will go to see her. Loki could only put this matter aside for the time being and adopt a delaying tactic. As long as he didn't go to see her, he wouldn't be exposed, and the surprise he prepared for his father would be successfully realized. Half an hour later, Loki walked out of the palace. As a result, he happened to see Queen Frigga walking towards him. Loki saw the other party and hurriedly wanted to hide, but Queen Frigga quickly stepped forward to block him. I think we need to talk. Frigga looked at Loki, and did not expose Loki's identity as the fake Odin right away. Instead, she spoke to him in a more soothing tone. This made Loki put down half of his heart. I am very busy right now, my queen. Loki imitated Odin's demeanor and voice and said to her, you should be in your palace, not here, otherwise I will. He was interrupted by Frigga before he finished speaking. Otherwise what? Otherwise, Loki continued to pretend to be Odin and said to her majestically, otherwise I will announce the cancellation of my engagement with you. Although he said so, Loki still felt guilty. He had already hidden the comatose Odin, and he didn't know if Queen Frigga could see it. Queen Frigga was stunned when she heard Loki say that he wanted to divorce her. She stared at Loki blankly. Just when Loki felt guilty about being looked at by him, Queen Frigga suddenly smiled quietly. Actually, you are Loki, right? What? Loki's expression became dull after his identity was directly exposed by the other party. Then he immediately shook his head to deny it. No, I don't know what you are talking about. I am Odin, the Lord of the Nine Realms, the King of the Gods, and the Master of Asgard. I have supreme authority. Even if you are my wife, you cannot challenge my authority. You can't hide your thoughts from me. I know you are the son of Peter Patrick. Queen Frigga came over and reached out to touch Loki's face. I know what happened. You stopped Loki's actions. She did not blame him for Loki pretending to be Odin and exiling Marvel Loki. Anyway, you helped Asgard, Frigga said to Loki with a complicated expression. But why did you pretend to be my husband and want me to divorce? She asked a question that she had always cared about. Seeing that Frigga recognized his true identity, Loki no longer concealed it. After looking around and confirming that there was no third person here, Loki coughed lightly and lifted his transformation, turning into young Loki. Well, I know I can't hide it from you, Loki sighed and said to her, I have never had any ill will towards you. I just think Odin is not a qualified husband and father. What? Frigga didn't expect that the other party would directly comment on her husband. I said Odin is not a qualified husband and father. His love has always been partial and unfair. He has never cared about what his children really want, Loki said to Queen Frigga seriously. Odin constantly conquers other countries and indulges in the pleasure of power and violence. When he was old, he suddenly woke up and let his son learn peace and kindness. But isn't this the biggest joke? He used his own violent way to educate his children for 1,500 years, but suddenly one day he told them to be mature and rational. So, I say he is never qualified. Frigga fell silent after listening to Loki's words. After a while, she looked up at Loki and said, you don't really know him. Yes, he is not my father. Why should I know him better? Loki shrugged his shoulders. This is why I hope you get divorced. My father is also a god. He also has Asgard and the World Tree. I think it might be a good choice for you to get married. Frigga didn't know whether to laugh or cry after hearing Loki's words that were too outrageous. She didn't quite understand Loki's train of thought. He actually urged her and Odin to divorce. They have been together for so long, and as gods of the Nine Realms, how could they get divorced? No, it's impossible. Frigga immediately rejected Loki's whimsical idea. Why? I think you two are quite suitable. Although you are more than 1,000 years older than my father, I don't think it's a big problem. Age is never a problem. Frigga, why do I always feel that this statement is weird? No, this is impossible. I don't think your father would want to do this either. I haven't told him about this yet. Loki tried to persuade Queen Frigga to change her mind. But my father also has a palace in Asgard that is exactly the same as this one. I think he should be considered another Odin. No, that's enough, Loki. Don't mention this anymore. Frigga stopped Loki from continuing. If you think it's because of the big age difference, I think, seeing that Loki was still nagging about his age, Queen Frigga reached out and grabbed Loki's ear. Although she was no longer young, she was still quite annoyed that Loki repeatedly mentioned her age. Okay, I won't say it. Seeing that Frigga was about to lose her temper, Loki quickly admitted defeat. Although he was rejected and admitted defeat, Loki's evil intentions did not die. Since Queen Frigga was unwilling, he remembered that Queen Frigga had a daughter, who seemed to be named Hela. The other party is the eldest daughter of the god King Odin, the sister of Thor and Loki. She was once the pioneer of Odin's conquest of the 9 realms, the executioner of Asgard, and the owner of Thor's hammer. Of course, due to Odin's failed education, the result is naturally the father and daughter's rift. In the end, Odin sent the Valkyrie Legion to conquer Hela, but was almost completely destroyed by Hela. All the Valkyries except Valkyrie were killed, and Hela was eventually deprived of her power by Odin and sealed on Earth. It's okay for my father not to marry Queen Frigga, and Hela can too. In this way, I will be eligible to inherit Asgard in 2 worlds. Loki's eyes turned around and began to plan whether to let his father marry Hela. Looking at Loki, Frigga knew that the other party must be playing some tricks again. Although Loki in front of him did not grow up in Asgard, his tricks were no less than Loki, who was raised by himself. You can't pretend to be the god King Odin anymore. Queen Frigga frowned and said to him, "This is a blasphemy against Odin and the glory of Asgard." Loki came back to his senses from his thoughts. "I just want to help Asgard." "Help?" Loki nodded and said, "My father once told me that Asgard will encounter Ragnarok, and everything will be destroyed at that time. Except for Thor, all the Asgardians will die." "I don't know if that is correct, but Queen of the Gods, you are a witch and can see what will happen in the future. Is that true? If so, maybe I will move some of the Asgardians here to another Asgard to preserve some of the fire." Faced with Loki's seemingly sincere question, Frigga was silenced again. After a long while, she sighed. "We can't change the future, Loki. Fate is an endless chain, everything depends on it to survive, and the development of the world itself also follows this principle in relationship. But my father also said that the limitations of fate can be permanent, but challenges cannot be absent for a moment." Loki said that he believed that fate was in his own hands. "I have seen the 3 goddesses of fate, and even they cannot determine the trajectory of fate, so I think I can give it a try." Loki tried to persuade Frigga to let her agree to let him serve as Odin for a period of time and help him move some Asgardians to his own world. After listening to Loki's words, Frigga was speechless for a long time. She found that the degree of whimsy of Loki in front of her was not that of an ordinary person. Desert Town. Peter didn't know that Loki was trying to find a stepmother for himself. After being rejected by Queen Frigga, he soon set his sights on Hela. "The cold beer is in the cabinet behind you. Just connect to the wireless password," Thor said to the newcomer Nick Fury, who was said to be his colleague. Nick Fury frowned and looked at Thor, who was curled up on the sofa playing games. "Who is he?" Smelling the unpleasant smell in the room, Nick Fury asked Star-Lord. "He's Thor." "Thor?" Nick Fury frowned. "Isn't that the name of the god of thunder in Norse mythology?" "Yes, you will be colleagues from now on." Azu came over and said to him, "Don't underestimate him. He used to be the god of thunder, but his father robbed him of his love, and his family died, so he became like this." Nick Fury nodded and asked with some doubt, "Is he really the god of thunder?" "Almost." Sitting on the sofa, Nick Fury asked Azu, "Are there a lot of such messy relationships between the so-called gods you guys have?" "I know that whether it is the so-called gods in Norse or Greek mythology, they all like to have messy relationships, and there are such dramas of robbing love." Before Nick Fury finished speaking, Peter walked into the room. After hearing what Nick Fury said, he shook his head and said, "I am not a messy god in your eyes, and I did not rob Thor's lover." Peter glared at Azu. "Regarding your problem, John, we will go upstairs to solve it later. This kid slandered himself for robbing Thor's lover. Is Meowhammer Thor's lover?" Chapter 253 Iron Man arrives, director of SHIELD Bleach. Peter decided to continue to increase the intensity of confinement on Zu. Pulling him into the dream world, this time he will not only be greeted by a demon, but also some unforgettable explosive stuff. "Why do you know about SHIELD?" Nick Fury sat on the sofa, leaning back and asked Peter. "I always know what I want to know, especially about your world." "Do you want a bottle of beer?" Peter, whose thoughts were interrupted by the black salted egg, said while handing him a can of beer. "Really?" Nick Fury hesitated to take the beer and asked him, "Don't tell me that you are a guy who traveled from the 22nd century. In your era, the economy of farmers and slave plantations has recovered, and the status of black people has returned to that before Martin Luther King." As he spoke, he cast his eyes on Zu. "Otherwise, this can't explain this kid's racial night." As he said, He picked up the beer can and poured it into his mouth. As a result, because the beer was too cold, his mouth and tongue were injured, and he almost jumped up. Fuck. Did you leave your beer in the freezer overnight? You better keep your mouth shut, Thor was scolded, so he put down the game console and stood up to face Nick Fury. Otherwise, I'll beat you up with my fists, you? Nick Fury sneered and looked at Thor coldly. It seems you don't know how to talk to someone you should respect. Thor's temper immediately surged up. He raised his fist and hit Nick Fury in the face. Bang! Nick Fury's nose was hit hard. Feeling the severe pain on his nose, he immediately covered his nose and stepped back. While squatting, he accidentally bumped into the table. Fuck! Before he could say the curse this time, Thor walked up to him. This is how we talk. We use fists to decide whose words are more powerful. Peter, who was next to him, did not stop the conflict between the two. Seeing this guy who always looked like a boss being beaten in person, Peter was looking forward to his counterattack. However, the result disappointed him. Nick Fury did not let his anger get to his head, but chose to give in. You the fuck man, why don't you dare to fight him? After ending the conflict with Thor, Nick Fury sat in front of Peter again with toilet paper stuffed in his nose. You said that S.H.I.E.L.D. is full of Hydra people. Do you have any evidence? Nick Fury, with a darker face, asked Peter. Peter coughed lightly, put down the beer in his hand, and said, since the end of World War II, the United States has begun to recruit former Nazi scientists to its camp, including scientists such as Hydra's chief scientist Anil Zola. These scientists have been recruited, however, Zola secretly rebuilt Hydra and deeply infiltrated important institutions such as SHIELD, laying the groundwork for Hydra's revival in the next few decades. Peter paused and continued, in 1972, Zola, the mastermind of Hydra, met his end. However, unwilling to end, he invented a way to continue to survive. He developed a huge and complex computer system and used the system to make himself immortal in digital form. He continued to work in SHIELD in this form of Zola, while manipulating the spread and influence of Hydra behind the scenes, especially using his digital existence to retrieve agent files and screen out those targets that are easy for Hydra to recruit. Listening to Peter's words, Nick Fury's expression became more and more serious. Fury. You have been the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. for so many years, but you never know who your enemies are, because they are not outside, not in the sky. The real enemies are actually always around you, Peter said, while looking at the dark night outside the window. The enemies around you are the most terrible. You know which bastards are Hydra, right? Nick Fury thought for a moment, looked him in the eye and asked him. You overestimate me. It is difficult to see the details of fate, Peter said calmly. Who is Hydra specifically? Should you investigate it, or do you actually know nothing about S.H.I.E.L.D. for so many years? Listening to Peter's words, Nick Fury's face was a little ugly. He found out that Peter's son was a race knight, and he himself was an old yin and yang master. This family is probably not a good person. The next day, Stark Tower ushered in an uninvited guest. Coulson, Tony Stark, who was just finishing his boxing practice with his bodyguard, wiped the sweat off his body with a towel while looking at Coulson, who was walking towards him. I didn't expect you to be interested in coming in person. Let me guess. Something unexpected happened to your S.H.I.E.L.D. organization, such as your boss being kidnapped. If they don't get the ransom within a day, they will kill him. That kind of trouble, right? You seem to be very well informed, Mr. Stark. My ears are always more sensitive than my eyes, and so are yours. Did you send Natasha Roshman to Stark Tower as your eyes? Tony Stark said to him in an unhappy tone while pouring a drink into his mouth. He was talking about the last time that the Black Widow agent disguised herself as an assistant and lurked in Stark Tower. What made him most embarrassed was that he almost fell into the other party's honey trap. After knowing that the other party was from S.H.I.E.L.D., he held a grudge against S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Black Brine Egg director. Facing Tony Stark's ridicule, Coulson didn't care, but talked to him about business. S.H.I.E.L.D. is in a bit of trouble, and we need your help, Mr. Stark. Stark nodded. I know. You want me to drive the battlesuit and help you find people all over the world, right? As he said that, he put down the drink in his hand and asked the other party in surprise, are you sure my actions will be authorized by the Security Council? I don't want to be held a hearing by those boring guys. No, Mr. Stark, your actions have always been legal. Coulson pursed his lips. He knew that the other party was venting his dissatisfaction with Natasha last time. That's good, otherwise I'm really worried that once I go out in the battlesuit, You will define it as illegal behavior, and then take away my Mark battlesuit." After Stark insulted Coulson for a while, he felt better. He sat on the chair in the lounge, and Coulson sat opposite him. "Since you want me to help you find your director, I think you must have some clues, right?" Tony Stark asked the other party about the business. Although he was a little dissatisfied with Nick Fury, he had helped him a lot before, and he would not just stand by and watch him die. "Yes, there are some clues." Coulson's expression became serious. "The enemy we are facing this time may exceed our expectations. In fact, we know very little about him, but what is certain is that he is quite dangerous." "Quite dangerous?" Tony Stark's temperament became more serious. "Are you saying that he is someone that even your shield can't deal with?" "Almost." Coulson handed some information to Tony and said to him, "We suspect that Director Fury's kidnapping is related to him." Tony nodded and took the information in front of him. "Peter Patrick? And Captain Motherland?" He fell into deep thought while reading the names on it. The next day, early in the morning. The sky was clear, but Peter's mood was as gloomy as a dark cloud. He has been unable to find any trace of Loki, and he is now getting angry. He even suspected that this kid had left this world and returned to Smallville or went to the Black Robe world again. Otherwise, he, Azu, Clark, and Star-Lord would have searched for him all over the world, and there would be no clues. Peter sat in the cafe, staring at the bright sunshine outside the window. He had already started to think about how to deal with this kid when he came back. But soon his brows furrowed, and he became a little worried. Was Loki in danger? With a creak, the door of the cafe was pushed open, and a white figure walked in. Nick Fury frowned at his skin that had turned into white, walked to him, and asked him, "I think you are fucking kidding me." Peter said last night that in order to cover up Nick's identity as the director of SHIELD, he had to change his appearance. Nick Fury originally thought that Peter's change of appearance meant changing into another person like the Skrulls. Unexpectedly, Peter directly changed his skin into white skin, and his facial features and body shape did not change at all. He now began to suspect that Captain Motherland was crooked because of Peter, a guy with a bad head. "Actually, this is the kind of rune magic I know," Peter said to him sincerely, "and don't you think this disguise is very effective? Now no one will recognize you as Nick Fury." Nick Fury looked at himself in the glass and uttered a curse. Fuck, he was ready to ask Peter to help him change back. He would rather wear a mask and a hat than this stuff. As he was about to speak, there was a bang outside the cafe, and the ground shook slightly. Looking up, Nick Fury looked outside. As a result, he saw a suit of steel armor slowly standing up from the ground. Tony Stark. Seeing his old friend appear, Nick Fury frowned. This guy appeared here. Is he here for Peter Patrick? Or is he here to save himself? "I have arrived at the scene," Tony in the battlesuit said to the SHIELD command room while slowly standing up. Chapter 254 Clark invites Iron Man to be the farm blacksmith. In the operations command room of SHIELD, Deputy Director Maria Hill frowned slightly as she looked at Iron Man on the big screen. As a well-trained super agent, Maria Hill is proficient in professional skills such as interrogation, hand-to-hand combat and shooting. She also has extraordinary leadership and command capabilities, and can command several military operations at the same time. She is an indispensable right-hand man for Nick Fury. Seeing the actions taken by Iron Man, she lowered her head and took out a mobile phone and sent a message to Nick Fury. As one of Nick Fury's most trusted subordinates, she was still in contact with him at this time. She now knew where Nick Fury was, and she also knew that he did not intend to return to SHIELD, but had other arrangements. Now Hill was in the operations room, sending the information and SHIELD to Nick Fury. In a small town cafe. After seeing the text message, Nick Fury put away his phone. Looking at Iron Man outside, he exhaled and said to Peter, "It seems that you are going to encounter some trouble." "This should not be a trouble," Peter put down the fork in his hand and said calmly. He did not expect that Iron Man would appear. "After all, I just dealt with a lump of iron before," he said to Nick Fury. "I already have considerable experience in this, and Clark and the others also have rich experience." On the other side, Clark was the first to discover the appearance of Iron Man. At this time, Azu and Star-Lord were out looking for Loki. Now only Clark and Thor were in the town. Tasting a very delicious pie in a nearby restaurant, Clark looked up and saw the other party's armor. "What is this?" Looking at Tony Stark's armor, Clark put down the pie in his hand, his face full of shock. He remembered the picture of the future he had seen in the mysterious house before. In the future, he and Azu, Star-Lord and others went to other galaxies for a great expedition, and the warriors at that time wore similar armor. Could it be that the armor on the warriors of the Godfathers was provided by this guy in front of him? Clark activated his perspective eyes and instantly saw the other party's face. It seems that the other party is the blacksmith who makes equipment for the Godfather. Stroking his chin, Clark began to consider whether to learn from Azu and Loki. Azu kidnapped Nick Fury to the farm, while Loki treated Thor as a farm cowboy. He could kidnap the Iron Man in front of him to the farm to be a blacksmith. In the future Great Expedition era, machinery and other things will definitely need his help. No. He must not have such an idea. Clark soon realized that his idea was too evil. How did he learn to be bad? Patting his head, Clark thought angrily that it must be the influence of Azu and Loki. Tony Stark didn't know at this time that there was a seemingly innocent guy staring at him in a nearby restaurant. Start scanning all suspicious people nearby. Believe me, this mission won't take too much time, Tony Stark said confidently. Coulson said to him through the radio, Stark, we must have a plan. I already have a plan. What plan? Attack. Looking at Tony Stark who came forward recklessly, Coulson shook his head helplessly. Black Widow looked at the big screen and said, they are all characters and myths and legends, and they are all gods. I think our Iron Man will definitely suffer. Everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. had already regarded Peter and his group as gods in Norse mythology. Hey, Natasha, just a reminder, you forgot to turn off the headset, I heard you. Stark's voice suddenly came to Black Widow. By the way, they are not gods, God is God. As Stark spoke, he soon found Peter sitting by the window in the cafe. Good, now I disturbed his breakfast time, I hope he won't be too angry. Tony Stark was about to walk towards Peter, but after just 2 steps, he found a figure standing in front of him. Who are you? I'm Clark Patrick Kent. Hearing Clark's name, Tony Stark said to him, does this have anything to do with you standing in front of me? Coulson's voice came to him at the same time. He is the son of Peter Patrick, be careful, he is like Superman. So, the rule is to beat the younger one before you can see the older one. After complaining, Tony Stark raised his hand and aimed the palm cannon at Clark. Back off, kid, or I will blast you into the desert to eat sand. Clark looked at the armor on the other party and took a deep breath. No, you can't do it, really? Final notice, don't stand in front of me, otherwise I will really do it. Clark knew that the other party must be here to cause trouble for the Godfather, so he naturally would not give way, and he had to test the sturdiness of the other party's armor. Very good, the ultimatum has been issued, you have no chance. With a bang, the palm cannon shot at Clark. Clark dodged to the side and advanced, making the other party's attack fall. Then he rushed forward, hugged the Iron Man suit, and rushed forward. Tony, who was unable to react in time, was hit hard by Clark. Bang! Clark punched Tony. The virtual screen in front of him flickered and was suddenly hit hard. Tony was stunned for a moment. What kind of strength does the opponent have? Tony Stark reacted quickly and fired the machine gun on his shoulder at the opponent. Clark was attacked and retreated. Tony Stark stood up, but then he was hit by Clark who moved quickly. With a bang, Tony Stark was knocked onto the outdoor open-air dining table. Fortunately, the dining customers were scared and hid, so no one was injured. Sorry, I disturbed your breakfast time. You can go to Stark Group to reimburse you. As he spoke, Tony Stark flew into the air with a boom. Clark saw the mess in the neighborhood and immediately realized that he was too impulsive just now. If he fought here, innocent people would definitely be hurt. Maybe we can go to another place. Clark told Tony Stark that they could go to another place to fight. Of course, Tony didn't want to fight here either, so he nodded and agreed to fly away. Seeing Clark and Iron Man leave, Nick Fury, who had turned white at this time, asked Peter, aren't you worried? You mean Iron Man? No, Clark knows how to use his strength, and he will be fine. Nick Fury was full of black lines. I was talking about your son. Who the hell said Iron Man? Bang! Tony had just landed in the desert when Clark, who had activated his super speed, moved over and grabbed his 2 arms. He immediately turned his arms, and the laser equipped on his arm hit Clark with a whoosh. Clark, who was hit head-on, loosened his grip on Tony's hand. Tony Stark took the opportunity to break free from his control, equipped his electric shock gloves on his fists, and attacked Clark's ribs fiercely. Bang! The heavy fist hit Clark's weak part fiercely. But what Tony didn't expect was that Clark's armpits were not his weak part. Clark was not affected much by the fist carrying strong electric current. He grabbed Tony's shoulders and threw him out. With a dull bang, Tony rolled to the ground, and then rushed back with the remaining momentum. A deep gully was plowed on the ground, and the dust quickly scattered. Nice armor, as powerful as the destroyer. Clark did not attack immediately, but talked about Tony's armor. If such armor is assembled for the Godfather's soldiers in the future, Clark has already thought of the use of these armors in the future great expedition. Are you interested in working as a blacksmith at Padrick's farm? Clark asked Tony Stark, who was lying on the ground. What? Realizing that he had said the wrong thing, Clark immediately changed his words. No, I mean, the chief designer of Asgard. Clark also learned from Loki and lied in the name of Asgard. Tony Stark stood up and looked at Clark in a daze. He thought that the other party might be crazy. Just as he was about to make some sarcastic remarks to the other party, he unexpectedly saw a white figure walking towards him. The other party was wearing sunglasses and holding a small signal-shielding device in his hand. Walking in front of Tony Stark, the white man put the small device on the ground and took off his sunglasses. Long time no see, Tony Stark. Who are you? Tony asked in surprise. He felt that the white man in front of him looked familiar. Nick Fury? Damn it! Hearing that the other party called himself Nick Fury, Tony was stunned for a moment, then opened the mask of his battlesuit. Oh, my God! Tony covered his eyes with his hands. God! You let my eyes be contaminated by nuclear radiation. Nick Fury frowned and looked at his exaggerated expression. Are you serious? Of course. You look like a sissy pretending to be tough now. Tony kept taking deep breaths. I know. You must have made a wish to those gods to let them turn you into white skin. Right. Shut up. Facing Tony Stark's repeated attacks, Nick Fury's face also turned red. That bastard Peter Padrick did it. You didn't do it because you hate being black. No. So you are black now. I am black. Not very convincing, but I have to take a picture. Tony quickly took out his phone and said, make a gesture. Director Fury, Nick Fury, at the same time. In Manhattan, New York, the exiled Marvel Loki raised his head and looked at the airport in front of him. Sir, your ticket. After checking the ticket, the waiter returned it to him. Thank you. The exiled Loki smiled at the other party and looked down at the location on the ticket. Norway. Chapter 255. Hela appears, Meteor Queen. Norway. In the western part of Scandinavia, Loki, who is exiled from this world by Loki pretending to be Odin, has arrived here. Although he was wearing a collar to restrain his magic power, he still easily got a lot of money with the Asgard weapons he carried with him. He spent money to buy a plane ticket and rushed to an ice field in the extremely cold land of Norway. Staring at the magnificent ice field in front of him, Loki took a deep breath and took out a box that exuded a powerful aura. This was taken from Odin after he fell into coma. Loki once learned from his mother that he had an older sister a long time ago. This sister was the eldest daughter of his father. She fought with his father and was invincible. She was keen on war, bloodthirsty and murderous, cruel, and had a strong desire for power. After Odin had a deep reflection on war and peace, he and Hela, who firmly believed in killing and totalitarian rule, had an irreconcilable conflict. In the end, Odin sealed Hela with a stronger power. From then on, the dome murals of the father and daughter's expeditions in the Asgard were also painted and covered, and Hela's deeds were completely covered. As time went by, no one remembered her story. Now Loki was exiled by another self from the farm, and he had to rely on the power of others to return to Asgard. For the throne, he can now cooperate with anyone, even the devil. Or to put it more precisely, Loki wants to use Hela and wait until he ascends the throne to seal her again. Looking at the treasure box in his hand, Loki could feel that it contained the power of Odin. He had previously destroyed the new murals and saw the old dome murals hidden in it. He knew that Odin used the treasure box to create the seal door and exiled Hela to Norway. Now as Odin gets older, the seal is gradually loosened. As long as he opens this seal door again and fully releases Odin's power, he can release his sister. I am the king of Asgard, and no one can stop me, Marvel Loki whispered to himself, glanced at the ice field in front of him, and then opened the treasure box without hesitation. As Odin released a powerful force, countless bright spots gathered in the sky and then disappeared. After a period of calm, Loki felt a dangerous breath suddenly descending. The entire ice field began to tremble. A rumbling sound was heard in the distance, and the snow on the top of the mountain began to fall rapidly. In the space in front of him, a rotating portal suddenly appeared. An uneasy breath came from the portal. Then, in his shocked eyes, a woman with long black hair wearing a green battlesuit slowly walked out. The black eyeshadow and decorations, as well as the strong smell of death emanating from the other party, made Loki quickly recognize that this was his sister, Hela. Hela's aura completely suppressed Loki. She walked out proudly and looked at Loki, and said to him, "Kneel down." "What did you say?" I said. "Kneel down and pay homage to your queen." Hela looked at Loki disdainfully and asked him to kneel down. "I think you're wrong. I let you out." Loki squinted at her. "You're not qualified to make me kneel." "Really?" Hela took a step forward and wiped her hands on her head. Her messy black hair immediately turned into a sharp fork hairstyle. "You are Odin's second son, right? You look alike in every way," Hela said as she stretched out her hand. Marvel Loki immediately felt an invisible force acting on him. With a thump. As a mortal, he couldn't support himself and fell to the ground. "My brother, I want to thank you for letting me out." Hela walked to Marvel Loki and a dagger appeared in her hand in an instant. The strangely shaped dagger was held in her hand and chopped towards Loki's head. Loki was startled and tried to dodge in a hurry, but the opponent's dagger chopped him in an instant. "Damn it," Loki cursed inwardly, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He thought his head was about to be chopped off, but the dagger only cut off the collar around his neck. The collar made of Asgard's Euro metal was easily cut off by her dagger. Without the restraint of the necklace, Loki immediately felt a sense of relief, and his bound power returned to his body. "From now on, submit to me, and your power is completely at my disposal." Hela took the lead and declared her master status as soon as she came up. "No, I am the king of Asgard, you must obey me." Loki, whose power has returned to this world, felt that he was capable again. He cast a magic spell, and the green robe on his body returned, and a dagger appeared in his hand. Loki looked at his elder sister with a serious expression. He wanted to let Hela know that he was not someone she could easily control. There was a crisp sound of snap. Before Loki's dagger stabbed the other party, Hela grabbed the blade. Crack! In the face of Loki's shocked expression, Hela easily broke the dagger. With a bang, Hela knocked Loki out. Loki felt a pain in his chest and fell to the ground, holding his chest. "I am Hela, the eldest daughter of Odin, the most powerful warrior in the 9 realms. Now, kneel on the ground and swear allegiance to me." "I don't want to repeat this sentence again." Hela looked down at Loki, and said to him with a smile on her lips. Loki didn't expect the other party to be so powerful and domineering. He wanted to say something harsh to this sister, but in the end he chose to admit his defeat, stood up, half-knelt in front of her, and swore allegiance to her. "Very good." Hela looked at the surrendered Loki with satisfaction, and a hint of pride flashed in her eyes. "Odin is not dead yet, but he is dying. Now, let's go to Asgard and take back what should belong to me." Loki stood up in humiliation. Although he declared his allegiance to this sister on the surface, he was ready to stab her in the back at any time. Asgard. Loki, who had always been cheating his father, didn't know that his other self had released Hela and was heading towards Asgard. At this time, he had already persuaded Queen Frigga to move some of the old and young Asgardians to Peter's world tree. Frigga, who had a glimpse of the future, had seen that the existence that destroyed Asgard was approaching here. So even though she knew that if she did this, Odin would definitely not agree. But in order to avoid the future she saw, she could only pretend that she did not recognize Odin as Loki in disguise, and try her best to cooperate with Loki to move some of the Asgardians to Peter's world tree. Bang! Hela, who entered Asgard, shot a dagger and killed a god guarding the entrance. The remaining 2 wanted to draw their swords, but they were also easily killed by Hela, who was strolling in the garden. Watching Hela kill 3 Asgardians, Marvel Loki's expression was full of shock. You killed them." Although he wanted to kill back and snatch back his throne, he never thought of killing people. Now seeing Hela kill the Asgardians casually, he suddenly felt that he had made a big mistake. "Is there any problem with this?" Hela walked towards Marvel Loki, looked at him and slowly said, "Odin is old, you and your brother were exiled and lost the qualification of the throne. Only I am qualified to inherit the throne and lead Asgard to restore its former glory. Anyone who stands in my way will only end up dead." She looked at Marvel Loki deeply. "Of course, even you are the same." As she spoke, she walked into the Asgard palace. At the same time, in the desert town, Nick Fury blocked Tony Stark's connection with S.H.I.E.L.D. and appeared in front of him. Because his skin has now become white skin, Tony Stark laughed at him. "Can you shut up your chattering mouth?" Damn it, Nick Fury now wanted to staple the other person's mouth shut. "Sorry, I'm used to it now. I promise not to mention your skin problem again." Tony Stark waved his hand. So you weren't kidnapped? No, I was kidnapped by that bastard Captain Motherland, but his father isn't that bad. You mean, that young Peter Patrick, his son is Captain Motherland? Tony Stark looked at Nick Fury in shock. He obviously looks like a young virgin. You said he is Captain Motherland's father? Are you kidding? It's not a glorious thing to say bad things about others behind their backs. Peter stood behind him without knowing when and suddenly interrupted. Startled, Tony Stark turned around and saw Peter standing behind him with a calm expression. Seeing Peter Patrick, who is listed as the most dangerous person by SHIELD, standing in front of him, he subconsciously raised the arm of his armor and pointed the weapon at him. Believe me, Mr. Stark, if I want, I can take off your armor in an instant, Peter said after taking a look at his suit. Nick Fury nodded to Stark. Believe me, he will definitely do it. It sounds like you guys are a group, and I'm the villain you're dealing with. Tony was speechless after hearing what the two said. At the same time, he was alert to Peter. He almost died when he fought with Clark just now. If it was this guy's father, he suspected that his suit might really be torn apart. Now he had to think about how to get out. Tony Stark was already thinking about how to run away. Nick Fury didn't need to be saved by himself, but now he needed to save himself. Because he always felt that Clark looked at him a little strangely. Chapter 256, The Great Migration of Asgard, The Battle of Asgard. Half an hour later, Tony Stark finally knew what was going on. It turned out that he had become a tool for the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. to amuse himself. He was very depressed when he learned that Nick Fury was not really kidnapped. You should have informed me, Director Nick White, Tony Stark sighed and said to him, you almost made me a fool. No, you may not be a fool, but I know there are many fools in S.H.I.E.L.D. My goal is to find them out. This is a good opportunity. Nick Fury sat down and crossed his legs, and said to him, at present, only you and Agent Hill know that I am here. You are the two people I trust the most. Then should I feel honored? Tony rolled his eyes at Nick Fury, and then asked him, Captain Homeland, that Clark just now, and their father Peter Patrick, who are they? Have you heard of Thor? Nick Fury asked him. Of course, the one in Norse mythology, the god who controls thunder and lightning. Yes, that's him. Nick Fury pointed to the next room. This guy is playing video games next door now, and he punched me in the nose yesterday. Who do you think they are? Are you saying they are really the gods in the legend? Tony Stark asked in astonishment. He had never thought that there were really gods in this world. If there really were gods, could the armor he developed deal with these gods? For a moment, Tony Stark doubted himself. Maybe not. The only thing that is certain is that they are not easy to mess with. Nick Fury shook his head, stood up and walked to the window, staring at the sky outside and said to him, there are many forces in this world that we can't imagine. 3 years ago, I had an agent under my command. She solved a criminal gang led by an Inhuman. This incident caused her serious psychological trauma. In addition, this incident also made me realize that in front of a powerful individual, no matter how many ordinary people there are, they are difficult to resist. Nick Fury spoke out his true thoughts. Coupled with the appearance of Peter Patrick this time, I think it is imperative to form a team to deal with this special event. Listening to Nick Fury's words, Tony nodded. I guess, you want me to join this team, right? I do mean so. Nick Fury crossed his hands with a serious expression. Sorry, I have no interest. Do you think you can deal with Peter Patrick by creating a team and adding a few guys in tights? Tony rejected him bluntly. Sorry, I don't have such confidence. Nick Fury frowned slightly and said to him, Peter Patrick is not our enemy. Don't be so arbitrary. Director Fury, you are not in a dominant position now. Are you talking to me about being arbitrary? Mr. Stark, I have much more experience than you, and I know how to see a person better than you do. Nick Fury exuded his powerful aura and stared at Stark's eyes. God gave me an eye to make it sharper than your two eyes. Tony Stark was fighting with Nick Fury here, and Peter was talking to Star-Lord and Azu next door. How is it? Did you find anything? Peter asked Azu and Star-Lord, who were looking for Loki's figure. There are some clues, Dad. Azu told him what he had found. I saw Loki boarding a plane in Manhattan. Manhattan? Plane? Peter's eyes froze for a moment, not knowing why Loki would take a plane. But he is not the Loki we know, he is the Loki of this world, Azu explained to Peter, and he has a collar around his neck. I guess he should have been exiled to Earth. Peter listened to Azu's words, frowned and asked, isn't he the king of Asgard now? Who can exile him? He suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. At this time, Odin is usually asleep. Is there someone behind the scenes? Could it be Loki? The figure of his third son, who is a suspect, entered his mind. Did you bring him here to ask clearly? After thinking for a moment, he asked Azu. When I saw him, the plane had already taken off. Unless I shot down the passenger plane. But, Dad, I can't do that. You know, I am a peace-loving person. I won't do such a thing. Peter listened to Azu's words and thought that this kid was becoming more and more unreliable. You and Maeve in the Black Robe world sent a plane of people to die. You and Clark on the farm almost crashed a passenger plane into the cornfield. Have you done such things too often? Not knowing that Peter was complaining about himself in his heart, Azu continued, although I didn't stop the plane, I know the destination of the plane. Where's the destination? Norway. Peter listened and nodded. Norway was the first place where Odin appeared, and it was also the place where he would die in the future. What was Loki in this world doing there? Stroking his chin, Peter thought to himself, it seems that I need to go to Asgard. Asgard. The goddess of death Hela, at this time, had arrived in front of the hall with Marvel Loki. Thanks to the timely warning of the guards, the warriors of the entire Asgard have gathered here. Loki also learned the news. He transformed into the appearance of Odin and appeared in front of the hall. Don't take another step forward, otherwise I will punish you, Loki threatened Hela in the tone of Odin. He had recognized the woman in front of him as the goddess of death Hela. I thought you, who are old and will stay on the throne and die in decay, but I didn't expect you to regain your youth. What a pity, Hela shook her head and said to Loki, who was disguised as Odin, but, under this youthful body, it is not Odin's soul. She could clearly see that the Odin in front of her was Odin in disguise. But she didn't expose it directly. Standing in the center of the hall surrounded by the Asgardian army, she said to the crowd, my father is like a dead tree. Even if he is not dead, he has already lost his ambition. We once had supreme power in the universe, and our status was unmatched, but Odin stopped at the 9 kingdoms. Our destiny is to rule all other kingdoms, and I am here to restore that power. Kneel before me, join me, and embark on this great journey with me. Facing the entire Asgardian army, Hela not only did not show any fear, but began her own declaration. Enough. Just as Hela continued to speak, a voice came from behind the crowd. Enough, Hela. Hearing the familiar voice, Hela looked forward and saw her mother, Queen Frigga. Mother, it's been such a long time, Hela greeted her mother gracefully. It's been so long that I almost forgot about you, so long that everything has decayed. So long that everyone has forgotten what kind of glory we once shouldered. Stop, Hela, you've made enough mistakes. My mistakes? Mother, have you forgotten what you did to me? You trained me to be a great warrior, to win glory for you and win the war, but then you suddenly realized and said that everything before was a mistake. You denied both yourselves and those warriors who died for you. How ridiculous. The brave warriors died meaninglessly. The warriors laid the foundation for the throne with their heroic bodies, but in return they got forgetfulness and betrayal. Hela sneered, looking at Queen Frigga coldly. Now I want to restore the former glory. If you don't kneel to me, then be prepared to die. Looking at her eldest daughter who was looking at her with hatred, Queen Frigga sighed helplessly. She knew that no matter how much she said, she could not stop the other party's ambition. Now things have developed like this, all of them are at fault. Seeing that the other party was determined not to give up, Loki knew that the other party would never give up. At this time, he felt a little guilty holding Odin's body. He knew how powerful this elder sister was. 3,000 Valkyries were slaughtered by her, and only 1 Valkyrie survived. The other party was fighting on the home field, and the power was almost endless. Now the only person who could deal with her except Odin was probably her father. Impossible, Queen Frigga rejected her request. The Asgard warriors who were provoked by Hela finally rushed towards Hela. It seems that you don't understand what I say. Hela instantly transformed into countless daggers and long swords, and bombarded the surrounding Asgard soldiers indiscriminately. Puchy! Puchy! As a series of sharp blades cut flesh, shrill screams came one after another. In just a moment, Hela easily slaughtered a large number of Asgardian soldiers who surrounded them. Seeing Hela's powerful means, Loki, who was pretending to be Odin, felt cold in his heart and his expression changed slightly. Maybe he should find a chance to escape. Loki said that he could not pretend to be Odin at all. But he looked at Frigga. How about taking the queen away with him? You are really not afraid of death? As she spoke, Hela condensed more daggers and swords. Loki, disguised as Odin, looked at Hela, who was killing everyone. He conjured up his staff. When he was about to act, his arm was grabbed by Frigga. "Send more Asgardians to your world, go." Queen Frigga signaled him to transfer the Asgardians. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 257. Thor loses his brother, Peter becomes his father in his dream. Loki glanced at Hela and nodded. "I'll go right away." He had originally planned to introduce Hela to Peter. But now it seems that his father may not be able to control such a fierce woman. Bang! Hela moved forward, shooting out a dagger from her hand, and kicked the Asgardian soldier with a high kick. The Asgardian who was attacked vomited blood and flew backwards. At the same time, the dagger in her right hand instantly condensed into substance and stabbed the neck of the person closest to her. She dodged the enemy's attack sideways, moved her body slightly to the left, and summoned a huge long sword horizontally, swinging it to the left and right. The power of this blow was extremely strong, knocking all the Asgardian soldiers nearby away. With a loud bang, Sif's body fell heavily to the ground, the floor of Asgard was shattered by the impact, and dust filled the air. The three warriors of Asgard next to her were also injured to varying degrees. Several people had never expected that the opponent's strength was so strong, which was an overwhelming advantage for the Asgardians. Volstagg, one of the three warriors, gritted his teeth and stood up, dodging the flying dagger. After being hit head-on by the dagger, the stone pillar in the square made a dull sound and fell down. A loud bang sound was heard. The stone pillar hit the ground with a loud noise, shaking the nearby ground. Dust and rubble from the collapse burst out and fell on the ground. Facing Volstagg's attack, Hela flashed in front of the opponent and grabbed the opponent's neck. Volstagg, who was strangled by the neck, was thrown forward in the air. Bang! Volstagg's shoulder hit the ground hard, breaking his bones, and he screamed in pain. Seeing that the Asgardian warriors were constantly being killed by Hela, Frigga immediately stepped forward and slashed at her daughter with a big sword. Although she was a wizard, she was also a berserker who followed Odin to conquer the 9 realms. "Ah!" Queen Frigga roared and stabbed Hela fiercely. Hela turned around and used the dagger in her hand to block the opponent's attack, and then knocked Queen Frigga out with one blow. Frigga, who was lying on the ground, wanted to stand up, but Hela was approaching like a ghost, and stabbed her back fiercely with a dagger. "Be careful," marveled Loki, who was always paying attention to this side, saw his mother being attacked and immediately shouted. He moved towards Queen Frigga at the fastest speed. Swish! The next second, Queen Frigga looked at her son's chest in shock. Loki's body was pierced and blood gushed out of his mouth. Queen Frigga hugged Loki. "No, no, no, you little fool, what are you doing?" "I'm sorry, mother," Loki, with blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, apologized to Frigga with difficulty. "I'm sorry, I'm a fool, I made a mistake." "No, it's not your fault, it's not your fault." Frigga hugged Loki tightly. "Mother, am I your pride?" Loki asked his mother with a gradually weaker voice. "Yes, you are, that's good." Loki closed his eyes after getting a satisfactory answer. "No. No. No." Queen Frigga hugged Loki's body in grief. On the other side, Hela didn't expect Loki to block the attack for his mother. Looking at Loki lying on the ground, her expression became complicated. Because of a short trance, she was stabbed by the weapon of the Asgard soldier. Hela pulled out the sharp blade on her body without changing her expression. The wound on her shoulder was instantly healed. Boom! Boom! Asgard's airships also set out, attacking Hela repeatedly. Hela pulled out her cloak to block the airship's bombardment, and casually threw a spear at the airship in the sky. A deafening sound rang out, and the gunboats that besieged her were destroyed by her at an extremely fast speed. Hela's right hand transformed into a shield, and her left hand transformed into countless black daggers and sharp blades, blasting them around. At the same time, Peter used his own rainbow bridge to teleport to Asgard. After entering Asgard, what he saw was the melee scene in front of him. Hela faced the siege of thousands of Asgard warriors alone, and she was still at ease. Azu, Clark and Star-Lord also followed Peter and came. Seeing Hela's great power, the three were awe-stunned. "Who is this woman?" Thor, the god of thunder, looked at his fellow tribesmen being slaughtered in front of him, and his eyes turned blood red in an instant. Regardless of his lack of strength, Thor picked up a long sword and rushed towards Hela with a roar. Dang! Hela blocked Thor's attack and looked at Thor, who suddenly appeared in surprise. Look who this is, Thor, reckless prince, you are so weak and pitiful now. Thor was hit back with a punch. But in an instant, Hela grabbed Thor's neck again. My brother, have you been abandoned by Odin? What? Hearing the other party calling him brother, Thor was immediately confused. It seems that you don't know who I am. I am Hela, the eldest daughter of the god King Odin, your sister, the pioneer of Odin's conquest of the 9 realms, the executioner of Asgard, and the master of Thor's hammer. Hela told Thor her name. Thor was a little confused after listening to the other party's introduction. My sister? He looked to the side with a confused mind, and saw Loki in his mother's arms. Seeing his brother die, Thor's anger was ignited again. I'm going to kill you, Thor roared, broke free from the opponent's control, and attacked the opponent, but was thrown out by Hela. Just as she was about to attack Thor, Clark had already blocked her. Seeing Clark standing up, Azu and Star-Lord also surrounded her. Hela looked at Azu and the other two, frowning slightly. She could feel that the 3 people in front of her were unusual. Who are you? I am John Patrick, the eldest son of Peter Patrick, the native of Smaug, the future successor of Patrick's 9 realms, and the punisher of the evil. Azu also imitated Hela and reported his long title. Peter Patrick. Hela frowned. Who is that? The one who will deal with you. As soon as Azu finished speaking, hot eyes shot out of his eyes and rushed towards Hela. Star-Lord also quickly took out the elemental gun and shot at the opponent repeatedly. Clark suddenly started super speed and rushed towards the opponent. Hela used her cloak to block the attacks of Zu and Star-Lord, but was knocked out by Clark. With a loud bang, Clark rolled on the ground with her. Hela, who had amazing healing speed and endurance, quickly stood up and shot a flying sword at Clark. Clark barely dodged the flying sword, but was knocked away by the shield that Hela conjured. Asgard continuously provided her with strength, and she was able to deal with it calmly even when facing the siege of Clark and the other 2 at home. Even if she was injured by the 3, as long as it was not fatal, her wounds would heal instantly. Clark and the other 2 besieged Hela, and Peter came to Thor. Looking at Thor, who closed his eyes and fell into coma, Peter shook his head. This guy really fell asleep immediately. Looking at Frigga, who was holding Loki sadly in the distance, and then looking at Thor on the ground, in order to prevent the queen from losing 2 sons in one day, and in order to prevent the money he borrowed from going down the drain, Peter closed his eyes and instantly entered Thor's dream world. In the wilderness, Thor walked weakly. His legs became more and more tired, and he finally knelt on the ground with no strength. A figure slowly walked towards him from a distance with a light behind him. He waited until the figure walked up to him, and then he saw that it was Peter. Mr. Patrick, it's not time to sleep now, Saul. Peter looked at Saul, who looked powerless, and said to him, your sister is killing people outside. Saul was a little shocked that Peter could enter his dream. He opened his mouth, and finally said helplessly with his head down, no, I can't do it. I don't have a hammer, and I can't beat her. Peter looked at him in surprise. Are you the god of hammers? Without that hammer, you have nothing? Thor, that hammer is just used to help you control your power and concentrate your power, not the source of your power. Thor lowered his head even lower. It's too late, I've lost more. She has occupied Asgard. Peter shook his head and said to him, Asgard has never been a place. Never. This is Asgard. There is also Asgard in my world. As long as there are Asgardians, it is Asgard. Get up, Thor. Asgardians need you. After speaking to the other party, Peter turned and left. That's all he could say, and the rest depends on this guy's own understanding. For a moment, Thor stared at Peter's back as he left, and suddenly felt that he looked a bit like his father's back. Mr. Patrick, Thor called Peter. What? Peter turned his head. Why can you pick up the meow hammer? Maybe because I'm more handsome than you. Peter said the reason he thought was most likely, then turned and left. Also, Thor, you're stronger than you think. Thor was stunned for a moment after listening to Peter's words. After Peter's back disappeared, he clenched his fists. Thor opened his eyes slowly and woke up from his coma. Electric arcs suddenly appeared in his body and then shot out in all directions. Boom! A thunder blast sounded above his head, and lightning struck the ground with great power. Thor, who was surrounded by lightning, attracted everyone's attention, and Hela's movements also stopped. Then Thor jumped up, and the lightning brought him down from the sky, and hit Hela with a thunderous momentum. Seeing Thor's awakening, Frigga stood up in astonishment. She didn't notice that Loki, who was already dead under her, moved his fingers. Chapter 258 Odin wakes up, Peter fights Hela. Boom! Thor, carrying lightning, led the lightning around him, jumped down from the sky, and rushed towards Hela with a thunderous momentum. At this time, Thor not only regained his strength, but also realized the power of thunder. He didn't need Thor's hammer, he could master the power of thunder by himself. With a loud bang, Thor, surrounded by lightning, blew up the air and punched Hela. Feeling threatened, Hela immediately retreated. Although she dodged Thor's fist, the lightning lingering around the opponent attacked Hela with great power. Hela, who was shocked, immediately transformed into a shield to resist. Although she resisted Thor's attack, she was attacked by the heat vision shot down by Azu in the sky. The heat vision that burned the air suddenly bombarded Hela's body. At the same time, Star-Lord used the energy body of the gods to build a rope to tie up the opponent. Hela, whose hands were tied, was hit by Thor's fist carrying thunder in the front and was heavily blasted out. Bang! Hela, who had smashed on the Rainbow Bridge, immediately stood up and threw a flying sword to destroy the divine energy that bound her body. As soon as she released the control, she saw Heimdall, who was guarding the Rainbow Bridge, holding a golden sword and slashing at her. Hela quickly dodged backwards, and Heimdall's giant sword slashed at the Rainbow Bridge. With a bang sound, the Rainbow Bridge that was slashed shook violently. Thor, who was carrying thunder, was forced to retreat and came up to continue attacking Hela. Thor, who witnessed the murder of his own people and the tragic death of Loki, burst out with the greatest strength at this time. The three brothers Azu and Heimdall also came forward to help, and the five of them besieged Hela together. On the other side, Peter was about to come forward to help, and suddenly felt a strong breath coming from the temple. Could it be the breath of Odin? He frowned, hesitated for a moment, and activated his super speed. The next second, he rushed to the temple, and what came into his sight was Odin himself. Odin had already woken up and was standing in the hall holding a scepter. Seeing that this guy had woken up but didn't help to pose here, Peter wondered if this old guy had been watching from behind. Peter Patrick, Odin was not surprised by Peter's arrival. He touched the ground with his scepter and asked Peter. Yes, I am. Peter and Odin faced each other. It looks like you have woken up. I want to thank you. If you hadn't brought your children here, no one would have been able to stop Hela, and the entire Asgard would even be destroyed. Odin looked at him and said slowly. There was not much hostility in the other party's words. Peter thought he was going to hold him accountable for lifting the Meow Hammer. When I was young, I thought I could control my destiny, but in the end I found that I was just repeating the mistakes of the past. Hela is a mistake that I have never been able to make up for. I couldn't stop her at the beginning, so I imprisoned her, Odin calmly told Peter. Her power comes from Asgard and will be endless. Once she arrives here, no one will stop her. You, Peter Patrick, are from another branch of the world tree. I can feel the similar breath in you and me. You are the future me, but also a different me. I hope you will not follow my old path. Probably not. Peter didn't expect that the other party would regard him as the future Odin. But he is not a god, and he will not neglect his children like Odin. Ragnarok will eventually come, but not now. Your son Loki will move part of the gods of Asgard to your world tree. Wait, hearing Odin say that his son Loki moved part of the Asgardians to the world tree, Peter was stunned for a moment and then interrupted him. He asked Odin suspiciously, you said it was my son Loki who did it? He has been here all the time. Odin glanced at Peter. Yes, during this period, during the time I fell into deep sleep, he replaced me, used my identity to exile Loki to the lower world, and then moved some Asgardians to your world. Peter was immediately confused when he heard this. No wonder he couldn't find this kid recently. It turned out that he had been staying in Asgard. And he pretended to be Odin, exiled Loki from that world, and secretly transported the Asgardians to his own world. This kid is playing such a big game. Peter has now begun to consider whether to use a belt or a whip dipped in salt water to whip him when he returns to the farm. And this old guy. Peter cast his eyes on Odin, who was calm. He suspected that this old guy had woken up a long time ago and had been hiding behind the scenes to watch the show. Odin looked at Peter, who was lost in thought, and he touched the scepter on the ground, making a crisp sound. Peter's thoughts were interrupted and he looked up at him. Hela cannot be defeated in Asgard, even if I play now. Odin put the topic back to Hela, unless you can cut off her connection with Asgard. As he spoke, he cast his eyes on Peter and said, I know that you can use the rainbow bridge of your world tree to enter and exit the 9 realms at will. As long as you open the rainbow bridge and pull Hela into your world, you can cut off her connection with Asgard, so you can stop her. Peter was slightly stunned when he heard it. This old guy wanted to kill with a borrowed knife, and wanted him to deal with Hela. Really? But I don't have the confidence that I can do it. After all, as the master of the 9 realms, you can't do it. Peter shook his head and refused Odin. Odin frowned and said to him, "Don't you understand yet? Peter, Asgard has never been a place. This is Asgard, and your world tree is also Asgard. As long as there are Asgardians, it is Asgard. Your son moved some Asgardians to your world, and you have a deep connection with this place." Peter, he didn't expect that Odin would use what he said to deal with him. Did the other party also enter Thor's dream? "You are now the king of Asgard, Peter Patrick." No, this is just Loki's presumptuous decision. Peter did not accept Odin's moral kidnapping. "This has nothing to do with me." Odin probably knew what Peter was thinking. He glanced at the people fighting in the distance, and then said to Peter, "What do you want from me?" "Peter Patrick." Peter was waiting for the sentence from Odin. He pretended to hesitate and said to Odin, "You're Odin's treasure house. I need to pick a few treasures." Peter finally revealed his ambition. "I agree, you can choose anything you want," Odin said to him. "Now, Peter Patrick, come forward, I will give you the scepter temporarily, and then tell you the spell to deprive Hela of her power. As long as you can defeat her, you can imprison and seal her." Peter nodded, stepped forward to take the scepter representing Odin's power from Odin, and listened to the spell Odin told him. At the same time, on the Rainbow Bridge, the battle between Hela and Azu and others has entered a white-hot stage. Boom! A beam of thunder bombarded Hela, and Thor held the axe picked up from the ground and roared at Hela. Hela grabbed Thor's arm, but the thunder lingering around Thor knocked her back 2 steps. Ignoring the shocking wounds on her body, Hela stepped forward and grabbed Thor's chin. "Even if you are the god of thunder now, you can't defeat me, my brother." Throwing Thor to the ground, Hela was about to continue the attack, and Clark's attack followed closely. Hela immediately threw out a giant sword more than 10 meters long, stabbing it down from the sky. Clark saw the giant sword stabbing down from above his head, so he could only retreat quickly, but in an instant he was hit by the dagger summoned by Hela, and fell to the bridge with a bang, rolling along the Rainbow Bridge. There was a loud bang, and at the same time the giant sword also hit the Rainbow Bridge, shaking the bridge violently. The destroyed Rainbow Bridge burst into brilliant light. Hela, who had repelled Thor and Clark, stood in the middle of the Rainbow Bridge with a disdainful look, looking at the people who besieged her, with a hint of arrogance on her face. "No matter who you are, you can't stop me." She looked at Azu and the others, swung the dagger in her hand, and slowly said, "Everything in Asgard is ruled by me, and Odin's rule will end here by me." "I don't agree, especially the first half of your sentence," a voice suddenly sounded behind her. Hela turned back suddenly. What she saw was Peter holding Odin's scepter. "Who are you?" Feeling the powerful aura emanating from Peter and the Odin scepter in his hand, Hela frowned slightly. The guy in front of her was a greater threat than Clark and the others before. Her vigilance was raised to the highest level. "I am Peter Patrick, you should have heard of this name before." Hearing Peter's name, Hela was stunned for a moment. She soon realized that the other party was the father of the guys who besieged her. "You are Peter Patrick, and you are also the master of the 9 realms they are talking about." Hela looked at him coldly. "What qualifications do you have to be on par with Odin? You got one thing wrong, child. I am not Odin, child." Seeing Peter's young face, Hela's mouth twitched slightly. "You are obviously younger than me, and you dare to humiliate me like this." She was angry and was about to take action. Unexpectedly, she suddenly felt a slight shake from the Rainbow Bridge. Boom! The next second, a stream of light emitting colorful colors rushed towards the Rainbow Bridge. Hela wanted to leave immediately, but Star-Lord's celestial energy came to her. Peter used his super speed and lightning to move to her side in an instant. The celestial energy lingered in his hands and grabbed her arm, making it impossible for her to break free. Hela could only watch the Rainbow Bridge rushing towards her. Chapter 259 Peter, kneel down and call me father, I forgive your sins. Hela, who hadn't reacted to what was going on, was surrounded by a brilliant glow in the blink of an eye. She was pulled into the time tunnel and was shocked. Did the other party open the Rainbow Bridge? No. Impossible. Neither the guy who called himself Peter Patrick nor Heimdall saw them open the Rainbow Bridge. At this time, Hela didn't know that Peter had opened the rainbow bridge at the World Tree and pulled her into the DC world. On the other side, Asgard in the World Tree on the farm. Loki was settling the Asgardians he had teleported, but he didn't expect to see a rainbow with brilliant light coming down. Then, he saw Peter and Clark appear in the rainbow bridge. Following closely was the confused Hela. After Hela was pulled in by the rainbow bridge, she looked at the place in front of her in astonishment, which was the same as Asgard. Looking at the Asgardians in the distance, she mistakenly thought that this was the Asgard where she had lived and fought. But she soon realized that something was wrong. This is not Asgard. Not only are some buildings weathered and damaged to different degrees, but even her own strength has been weakened. If this is really Asgard, her own strength cannot be weakened. She clenched her fists and felt the changes in her body. Where did you take me? After a while, Hela raised her head and asked Peter, who was not far in front of her, with an angry look. This is my Asgard, Hela. If you want to regain the power of Asgard, kneel down to me and submit to me. Then you can be recognized by Asgard again and continue to gain power from here. Peter's voice echoed throughout the square. Thor, who was brought back, stared at Peter blankly and fell into a state of confusion. It turns out that Mr. Patrick really has an Asgard. The Asgardians who had just transferred in the distance saw Peter asking Hela to kneel down, looked at each other with dull expressions. This new master of Asgard doesn't look like a good person either. No. Don't even think about it. Hela gritted her teeth and looked at Peter angrily. She didn't expect that there would be a day when someone would ask her to kneel down. Asking her to kneel down before him and then give her the power of Asgard, isn't that the same as asking her to recognize an Odin again? Asking her to kneel down and recognize her father again, even if she dies, she will not do such a thing. Filled with anger, Hela rushed towards Peter. But now the home court has changed to Peter's home court. Clark and others will naturally not indulge her. Azu's heat vision shot towards her. The heat vision that burned the air instantly hid her. Thor jumped down from the air with an axe in his hand, carrying thunder and slashing at her. In the thunder of boom, Clark and Star-Lord's attacks also followed. Hela transformed into a dagger and shot it at the 4 people who besieged her. Although she avoided Azu's heat vision attack, her shoulder was still hit by Thor's axe. Blood spurted out immediately, and severe pain instantly attacked her whole body. After shooting out a dagger with a whoosh and repelling Thor, Hela looked down at her shoulder. This time the wound did not heal as quickly as before, and she could feel her physical strength draining away quickly. Damn it! Taking a deep breath, Hela felt something was wrong. This was the first time she felt uneasy after breaking free from the seal. Seeing that the wound on the opponent's shoulder had not healed, Thor was immediately encouraged and rushed over again with an axe. Azu, Clark, and Star-Lord also continued to increase their attacks. The group attack of several people soon made Hela exhausted. Bang! After a round of beating and attack, Hela was hit hard on the ground. Azu's hot eyes shot her shoulder, and blood gushed out. Covering her injured arm, Hela, who was no longer calm before, transformed into a dagger and shot at several people. While forcing the opponent back, she fled to the hall at the fastest speed. Bang! Landing in the hall, Hela, with blood flowing from the corner of her mouth and in a mess, raised her head and saw Peter standing in front of her. So? You still won't kneel down to me? Hela, if you kneel down to me, I can pardon you. No. Don't even think about it. Feeling humiliated, Hela conjured up a long sword and stabbed Peter. The next moment, she was shocked to see that Peter grabbed the long sword she threw. Crack! Crack! In Hela's incredible eyes, Peter completely crushed the long sword she conjured up. Her voice was no longer calm and composed as before. What? Peter, holding the scepter of Odin, shook his head at her. How can a god who disdains life control death? As Peter spoke, he activated the power of the ruby. Hela immediately felt a sense of fatigue and sleepiness. Although she tried desperately to suppress this power, she still felt that her mind and body were somewhat out of control. She staggered towards Peter, but was knocked down by Peter using the scepter of Odin the next second. Hela fell to the ground and slid backwards along the floor. Now, I'm going to take away your power. Peter looked at Hela who was lying on the ground and stretched out his hand to her. With a bang, Hela's helmet fell off and flew into his hands. At the same time, Peter recited the spell given to him by Professor Odin to deprive Hela of her power. Now Hela has been completely defeated by him. She felt a heavy feeling in her body without the power to resist, and she was attacked by weakness and powerlessness. No. You can't do that, Hela shouted at Peter desperately. At this time, Thor, Azu, Clark, Star-Lord, and Loki also rushed to the hall. What they saw was Hela, who was lying on the ground and roaring unwillingly. Peter ignored her shouting, but summoned the Rainbow Bridge, and a colorful light surrounded Hela. In despair, Hela looked at Peter with unwilling eyes. Peter held Hela's crown and said, "Whoever wears this crown will have Hela's power as long as he has kindness and responsibility." As he said that, he threw the crown into the passage of the Rainbow Bridge. Hela could only watch as the Rainbow Bridge took the crown away. No. No. Then, with her unwilling roar, the Rainbow Bridge teleported Hela, who had lost her power, away. The Rainbow Bridge of the World Tree can not only teleport people to the Marvel world, but also to the DC world according to Peter's consciousness. Peter asked the Rainbow Bridge to take the crown away, but he couldn't be sure where it would be thrown. It could be Metropolis, Gotham, or some remote place that no one knew about. In short, it would be easy for Hela to find it. As for what he said, whoever wears this crown, as long as he has a sense of kindness and responsibility, will have the power of Hela. He naturally couldn't do this, and it was purely teasing Hela. He used the spell provided by Odin to seal Hela's power, but he couldn't give it to others. Of course. If Hela could really have a sense of responsibility and kindness, he wouldn't mind returning her power to her. Thor, the god of thunder, was stunned when he saw Peter throw the crown down and banish Hela. Wasn't this the same trick his father used to deal with him? Now Peter was also using the same trick? He had already imagined that Hela, who had lost her power, would wake up in the human world and then set out to find the crown. After a long journey, she finally found the crown and found that she couldn't lift it. Whether it was his father or Peter in front of him, he suddenly felt that neither of them was a good person. Loki, who was standing next to him, was a little confused when he saw Peter's operation. It's over. His father had learned bad things from Odin. What would he do if his future father deprived him of his power and let him go out to fend for himself? Loki, after Peter solved the problem with Hela, he cast a bad look at Loki. "Loki, don't you have any explanation?" Peter asked him. "Don't you have any explanation for me about your actions during the time you were missing?" Loki was stunned for a moment and walked to Peter's side with some uneasiness. He coughed and looked around, hoping that Clark, Azu, or Star-Lord would help him. But they all looked helpless. "Well, I've been in Asgard, Dad. I want to help you," Loki said sincerely. "I've been trying to persuade Queen Frigga." "Convince her of what?" "Convince her to consider Dad." Loki said something that shocked Thor. "I think Queen Frigga is a good and virtuous wife." "Dad, you are single." "I thought Odin was dead at that time." Seeing that Loki was getting more and more outrageous, Thor quickly stopped him. "Hey, what are you talking about? Wait. You said my father is not dead yet." Hearing the news that his father was not dead, Thor widened his eyes. "Are you telling the truth? Your father is not dead. That was the conspiracy of your brother Loki. His purpose was to prevent you from returning to Asgard." After Loki said this to Thor, he turned his gaze to Peter and continued, "Dad, I just want to help you, and this time a lot of gods have moved here from Asgard. You now have some of the appearance of the Lord of the Nine Realms. You are also the King of Asgard now." Peter looked at the eloquent Loki and really didn't expect that the other party wanted to match him with Frigga. "Don't you know that the other person is several thousand years older than me? And who do you think I am to be interested in someone else's wife? Really? You said you were trying to help me, Loki, but you also attracted Hela. How do you explain this?" "Well, this is an unexpected situation. I didn't expect Loki from another world to be so crazy," Loki said awkwardly. "Very good." Peter has now thought about how he will deal with this naughty kid at night. Chapter 260 Iron Man's Anti-Crack Armor. One day later. Marvel World, Asgard. Peter had returned earlier and handed the scepter to Odin, and took out 2 treasures from Odin's treasury. After this battle, Odin suffered heavy losses. Not only did more than 3,000 people from Asgard move to Peter's world tree, but he also lost 2 treasures. "You have grown up, Thor." Odin held the scepter and said to his son with satisfaction, "You have realized what kind of responsibility you should shoulder as a king." "Yes, father." Thor knelt on one knee at the bottom of the steps and said to Odin, "But father, I don't think I am suitable to be the king of Asgard now." "Why not?" "Because I understand now that the throne will only bring cruelty and sacrifice, and I am not suitable for such a life." Odin sat on the throne and looked at him seriously. "You shoulder the glory of Asgard, Thor. My glory is the glory of a warrior, not a king." Thor said to Odin sincerely, "I know what I can do, father, and I know what I desire. Listening to Thor's words, Odin was speechless for a long time. After a while, he said to Thor, "My two sons, one desires the throne, and the other abandons it. Fate likes to play tricks so much. Go, my son, I will bless you in my heart." Thor stood up, looked at Odin, nodded and turned to leave. Odin, sitting on the throne, looked at Thor's back as he left, with a complicated expression on his face. New York. Nick Fury had regained his black skin. Wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, he sat in the driver's seat of a Lexus SUV. Bang! The car door opened, and Tony Stark sat in. "Are we an agent meeting? Why are you so mysterious?" Nick Fury glanced at him and said, "Because I'm still missing." Tony Stark closed the car door. "You are now a missing kingbird?" Nick Fury asked puzzledly. "What kingbird?" Tony took off his sunglasses and said to him, "Caesar once had a dream about flying. In the dream, he was a bird singing in the sky above the 7 white peaks of Rome. Later, his fortune teller, Titus Sabarina, warned him that his death was approaching, and said that the omen was a kingbird flying into the Hall of Power with a laurel crown in its mouth, but that bird would be chased by a group of crows, and the group of crows would attack the smaller kingbird and tear it into pieces." Tony shrugged. "You know the story later. His power was indeed torn apart. If you weren't in SHIELD, I guess that group of crows would tear SHIELD into pieces." "I'm not too interested in this damn bird story," Nick Fury said to him calmly. "I have my own plans for S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony nodded. "I have no doubt that there must be something else in your trick bag. Well, what is your purpose in calling me here? Do you want to chat with you to relieve your loneliness?" "No, I may leave New York for a while." Nick Fury handed a letter to Tony. "This is the letter Clark Kent asked me to give you." Clark Kent? Tony was stunned when he heard the name. "It's the guy who fought with you in the desert town last time." "It's him." Tony Stark took the letter in confusion and asked Nick Fury, "Why did he write to me?" He remembered the strange look Clark gave him at that time, and he couldn't help shuddering. Could this guy have some special interest in him? Thinking of the terrifying power that the other party had erupted, Tony suddenly felt a sense of crisis. What if this guy wanted to use force on him? He might really be defeated by him. No. He had to study a set of armor and upgrade the model of his new steel battlesuit. It's called anti-Clark armor. Tony began to plan the anti-Clark armor in his mind. Holding the letter, his thoughts were quickly pulled back. He opened the letter with a solemn expression. After reading the letter from Clark to himself, he found that the other party invited him to visit the farm. Inviting himself to be a guest? This made him even more suspicious that the other party had bad intentions. Who is Peter Patrick? After thinking for a while, Tony Stark put away the letter and asked Nick Fury, "Is he really a Nordic god? If you are interested, you can go and see for yourself." "Forget it, I'm afraid I will lose my virginity." Nick Fury was silent. After a moment, he said to Tony, "I want to build a team to fight against alien forces. The threats that the Earth may face are increasing. I need his help." He already knew about Peter's farm. "You expect him to send one of his sons to you?" Tony shook his head and said to him, "He is not from Earth, and may not be worthy of your trust. I know what to do, so I have to leave for a while." "Then you really don't care about SHIELD? Be careful of those crows," Nick Fury said confidently. "I have my own way." Looking at the time, he said to Tony, "Okay, Mr. Stark, you should leave. I wish you good luck in the future." "Thank you. I hope you won't become Michael Jackson in the future." Michael Jackson, as a black man, once turned his skin white. Hearing Tony's inhuman words, Nick's face immediately turned into charcoal. After Tony left, Nick Fury made a phone call. In a house outside New York, a green-skinned, pointy-eared Skrull hung up Nick Fury's phone. Then his body deformed, his skin twisted and shrank, and finally changed into the appearance of Nick Fury. Wearing Nick Fury's appearance, he walked to the mirror and observed himself. The Skrulls are an alien race with highly developed technological civilization. They have the ability to change their appearance and can perfectly disguise themselves as other creatures or characters, so they are also called copycats. Nick Fury temporarily left New York and decided to go to Peter's farm. But he couldn't put down his affairs at S.H.I.E.L.D., and the threat of Hydra was still there. In order to maintain the operation of S.H.I.E.L.D. and hide behind the scenes to find out the members of Hydra, he entrusted a Skrull friend he had known a long time ago to pretend to be himself. After ending the call with the Skrulls, Nick Fury put down his phone and drove away. In a cafe not far from Nick Fury, Odin turned his eyes away from the Lexus car. At this time, He was no longer the high-ranking Odin, but an ordinary old man sitting in the cafe. "Why don't you sit down and have a cup of coffee together?" he said to a woman in a yellow monk's robe behind him, Master Ancient One. The next day. DC World. Peter didn't know that his back-and-forth world shuttle had been noticed by Master Ancient One. The supreme sorcerer who protects the Earth wanted to talk to Peter for a while, but was stopped by Odin. The eternal flame and the ice box in Asgard inside the world tree. Peter looked at the two treasures taken from Odin's treasury in front of him, and his eyes narrowed. The eternal flame is Surtur's treasure. Odin snatched it from him to avoid the emergence of Ragnarok and kept it in his own treasury. This fire will never go out. Just like Asgard is the source of Hela's power, the eternal flame is the source of Surtur's power, symbolizing destruction and rebirth. Hela once used the power of this fire to resurrect the soldiers of the ancient times and her mount, the giant wolf. As for the ice box, this treasure of the Frost clan can freeze the entire planet in an instant. Now that I have become a Ton rat, I not only have the key to the magic house, the 3 artifacts of the sleeping demon, and the infinity gauntlet in my hands, but now I have 2 more artifacts. Could it be that I am conquering the world now, and when there are more children in the future, I will give each of them one? In this way, I won't be afraid that there won't be enough property to share after 1,000 years. Shaking his head, Peter put his wild thoughts to an end and put the treasure in the Asgard treasury in the world tree. In order to prevent Loki from taking it out secretly, he set up a magic circle with runes. After leaving the world tree and returning to the real world, he heard a voice from outside. "Uncle Padraic, are you there?" Lana's voice came. Seeing that the door of Padraic's farm was open, Lana rushed over immediately. As soon as she entered the farm, she saw a black man holding up an axe and splitting the Korean log in half with a click. Hello, Lana, who was stunned for a moment, greeted the other party. "Is this a newcomer to work on the farm? Doesn't Uncle Padraic hate black people? Is it the cheap labor hired by Uncle Padraic?" Nick Fury, who was splitting wood, stretched his body. "Who are you looking for?" "I'm looking for Uncle Padraic." She always felt that the one-eyed black man in front of her was a little scary. "Come in, Lana." Peter's voice came from the living room. Lana entered the living room and saw Peter, whom she had not seen for a long time. Next to her was a tall, muscular man, drinking beer with his bare chest. When he saw Lana come in, he quickly put on his clothes. "He's Thor, who came to work on the farm," Peter explained to Lana. Then he looked at Thor with dissatisfaction. "Thor, go help Fury chop the wood, and drive the tractor back from the cornfield." He now regretted that he should not have brought the 2 back. Nick Fury, this black man, is indeed good at work, but he keeps asking about this and that, and looks sneaky, more like a spy than a farmer. And Thor, on the other hand, is completely addicted to beer and games. He thought this guy would cheer up after awakening, but he is still the same. "What's the matter, Lana? Thanks to and for the rewards, and thank you all for your support. It's the end of the month, and I'm begging for monthly tickets from readers." Chapter 261, Lana the Snitch. Thor, Azu and Beer talk about father. Nothing. I just heard that you guys are back from your trip, so I came to see you," Lana said with an unnatural expression. She always felt that Thor beside her was unconsciously distracting her mind. Peter had disappeared for more than a week, and Lana still thought something had happened, so she came to see him. "Thank you." Peter saw Lana's worry from the expression on her face and thanked her. "There were some accidents on the trip, but overall, I gained a lot, both spiritually and materially." Lana nodded as if she understood. She looked around and asked Peter, "Where are Clark and the others?" "Clark and John are back at Kent Farm," Peter replied. "Star-Lord went to school, and as for Loki, he was dragged into the dream world and beaten up. Because the spiritual world is immortal, Peter created many dream monsters to beat him up, resulting in this parent-child interaction activity, which left a deep impression on Loki. So much so that Loki has not recovered yet. In addition, Peter also confined him to his house and ordered him not to leave the farm for a week. However, Lana's purpose did not seem to be to inquire about Clark and Azu. She glanced at the stairs and confirmed that Thor had gone upstairs before whispering to him, "Uncle Padraic, did you go to another world?" Hearing Lana's words, Peter looked at her in surprise. The other party could actually guess it. Being stared at by Peter in surprise, Lana coughed a little embarrassedly, looked around, and said to Peter, "I want to tell you something, Uncle Padraic. I promised to keep it a secret from Loki, but I think it is necessary to tell you now, just for you." Hearing Lana's words of keeping it secret, Peter fell silent. Are you also a secret warrior like Clark? I'm all ears. Although he complained in his heart, Peter showed a smiling expression on his face. On the night of the kidnapping, Loki and I entered a place called Asgard. Lana told Peter how she was forcibly pulled into a strange space, then Loki asked her to pretend to be Queen Frigga, and finally was discovered by the real queen. After listening to Lana's story, Peter was shocked. He knew that Loki had entered Marvel Asgard. But he didn't expect that Lana was also involved. Isn't this kid afraid that he will cause Lana to have an accident? And he also let Lana pretend to be Queen Frigga. Is she addicted to role-playing? It seems that this kid pretended to be Odin, exiled Marvel Loki, and brought himself and Queen Frigga together. It was premeditated. Stroking the beard on his chin, he suddenly felt that the beating of Loki yesterday was still too light. I should add more iodine to the belt and disinfect it while beating. Thank you for telling me this. Peter gave a strong affirmation to Lana's snitch behavior. By the way, did anything happen in Smallville during my absence? He asked Lana about what happened in the town during his absence. Lana nodded and told him about Kara's several visits. There was also someone who called herself Diana Prince who came here, but she seemed to be a guest of Zora's house next door, the pregnant Zora. As Lana spoke, the face of Diana Prince emerged in her mind. She was deeply impressed by her heroic temperament. Wonder Woman? Peter was stunned when he heard Lana say that Wonder Woman had visited. He didn't expect that she would come to see him at this time. Thank you, Lana. Peter and Lana chatted for a while and thanked her. Finally, before she left, she gave her some local specialties from the Marvel world. Lana looked at the food Peter handed her. What is this? Fondant cake, and some things you may not have eaten, because of Hela. Peter came back in a hurry and didn't have time to search for more things in the Marvel world. He didn't even bring back a few pieces of Tony Stark's armor. In the end, in addition to Odin's artifacts, he only brought back some food. Thank you. Thank you, Uncle Padraic. Lana thanked Peter happily. She was happy that Peter could think of her. As for the importance of the gift, she didn't care at all. At night, Peter's family sat at the dining table to eat. Because of the addition of two outsiders, the workload of cooking increased. Peter, who was lazy to begin with, directly handed the responsibility of cooking to Nick Fury. Tasting the fried chicken made by Nick, Peter had to admit that the other party's was better than his. It was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside, and the skin was covered with several layers of seasonings, which was not much different from the fried chicken sold in the fried chicken shop. Eating fried chicken with French fries and dipping sauce, Nick suddenly looked up and asked Peter, "Is there no alien invasion in your world?" After his investigation, it seems that this place is more chaotic than the Marvel world. Especially the place called Gotham, which is simply a paradise for criminals. Although there is a Batman who goes out at night, it seems to have little effect on stopping these illegal and criminal activities. He couldn't imagine how the US government in this world would tolerate a city with such a trend. Not yet. Peter glanced at Clark, thinking that the most powerful alien in the world is sitting next to you. Isn't there an organization similar to SHIELD? No. Peter put down the fried chicken in his hand and looked at him. Maybe Director Fury, you can build an SHIELD branch here. I am interested in being a deputy director. There is no Hydra here, so you don't have to worry about being sidelined. Forget it, I don't have such ability. Nick Fury knew that Peter was joking with him, and he didn't fall for it. Peter shook his head regretfully and stopped talking. But while eating fried chicken, he soon realized something very important. Inviting Nick Fury to eat fried chicken seemed to involve racial nights. Looking up and seeing Nick Fury's delicious expression, Peter felt relieved and felt that he was too sensitive. The black person didn't mind, so why should he care? Late at night, Thor didn't lie down on the bed to sleep, but went to the second floor of the barn. Feeling the clear night sky and gazing at the farmland in the distance, Thor sat down on the chair beside him and took out a beer can to prepare for his beer business. As soon as he unscrewed the beer can, he heard a sound coming from behind. Hearing the creaking sound of the stairs being stepped on, Thor turned around and saw Azu coming up. From Azu's stunned expression, it can be seen that he did not expect Thor to occupy his secret base. Although he wanted to say something harsh and drive Thor out of his secret base, Azu finally held back. Adhering to the principle of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, since Thor and Loki don't get along well, he can get along well with the other party. Anyway, the other party is just here to work and will not threaten his position. Hey, Thor. Azu instantly squeezed out a bright fake smile on his face and greeted the other party. John, Azu nodded and glanced at the beer can in the other's hand. Can sleep? Yes, Thor looked up at the sky. Too many things have happened recently. I always like to think about it alone. He put down the beer in his hand. This is the farthest I have been from Asgard. To be honest, I am surprised that you would give up your throne. Azu still admired Thor for this. Because if he was asked to give up the inheritance of his farm, he would never agree. I am just a warrior who has been fighting with my father. I never expect to be a king, Thor said a little bleakly, but it seems that my father never taught me these. He looked at Azu. How did Mr. Padrick train you and train your unique abilities? Azu was stunned and recalled his childhood. I have an orange cat named Zyojin. I like it very much. We are inseparable. It is very good at catching mice. Azu talked about the story when he was 4 years old. One day, Zyojin and I went to catch mice. Zyojin was very capable and caught a mouse, but he didn't expect that there was a golden eagle in the sky. The golden eagle swooped down, caught a Jin and flew into the sky. At that time, I was overwhelmed by anger and didn't want Zyojin to be taken away. As he spoke, Azu fell into past memories. I shot out heat vision from my eyes and hit the golden eagle. Because I couldn't control my power, the heat vision swept the sky like a flame. As a result, Ajin was also killed by me. Azu's expression became complicated. So I was afraid of my power. I was afraid that it would hurt others again. In order to help me overcome this fear, my father proposed a solution. At this point, Azu paused and continued. He asked me to shoot heat vision at him. Although I burned my father badly, he told me to do the right thing, even if others don't want to, even if you are afraid, even if you think no one is paying attention. Azu was serious for once and talked to Thor about his childhood experience. This is what our father trained us. That's right. Hearing this, Thor nodded, and after thinking for a while, he said, Mr. Padrick is a good man. Yes, but your father is not a good man. Azu expressed his own opinion. You have strong limbs and a simple mind. Your brother Loki is a weird guy who is good at tricks and deception. Your sister Hela always keeps a hideous face. To be honest, brother, your family situation is unimaginable. If it weren't for my father, your family would have exploded. You can imagine what a bastard your father is. Thor, your words are so hurtful. Chapter 262, Unable to lift the crown, Hela's collapse. Nandarbit. A black Toyota car sped past on the road. Talia al Ghul, sitting in the driver's seat. The rain from the car slid down the window, distorting her vision. The daughter of the leader of the Assassin's League, the initiator of the nuclear reactor at the Gotham dock, was driving forward at this time. Because of Peter's intervention before, the plan to destroy Gotham failed, and Bane's whereabouts were unknown. She had no choice but to return to the headquarters. After being depressed for a while, she received a message about an abnormal incident in a nearby town, and immediately drove to the scene with her men. This remote town in Nandarbit, due to frequent natural disasters, led to the decline of the economy, which indirectly made the population living in the area increasingly sparse. Even at night, there were not many lights in the town. Getting out of the car, holding an umbrella, and walking on this road, Talia walked towards her destination. The muddy road swallowed her boots, and the shadows on the treetops on the roadside seemed to follow her footsteps, jumping from one tree to another. After walking for a few minutes, she finally arrived at her destination. This was a garbage dump, not the kind of functional garbage dump that people often go to. To be precise, this should be a sloppy dumping site. Acres and acres of worthless waste and debris filled the place. In the distance was a scrapped Oldsmobile, and there were also containers and garbage bins here. Talia, holding an umbrella, endured the pungent smell of garbage and looked up ahead. Several cars were parked in front, and the headlights were shining brightly. The strong light captured the slashes of rain. A subordinate of the Assassin's League came up and said to her, "Leader, that thing is in front." Talia nodded and walked forward. Soon, she saw a crown with a faint halo placed on the ground. The crown was black, and the horns on the head were as ferocious as the horns of a Sika deer. "What is the specific situation?" Talia frowned and asked her subordinate. The local said it fell from the sky. "We tried everything we could, but we couldn't move it." Talia listened to her subordinate's report and asked in surprise, "You can't even move it?" "Yes, we even used large machinery." Talia frowned as she heard this. She looked at the crown, which was getting smoother and shinier after being soaked by the rain, and turned her head to look at the crane parked next to her. She thought for a moment, held up an umbrella and walked to the ground, bending down to pick it up from the ground. But no matter how hard she tried, the helmet didn't move. Unconvinced, she handed the umbrella to her subordinates and used both hands to push, using all her strength, but the crown still didn't move. After trying for a while without success, Talia had to give up. She stared at the crown in front of her that had left all the Assassins' League helpless, and whispered to herself, "What the hell is this?" Crack! A thunder exploded in the sky, and the dazzling light illuminated the day. Talia saw a figure appear in the lightning. Many members of the Assassins' League also cast their eyes on the newcomer. Hila, who was wearing a green leather jacket, had a slender figure, long straight black hair, and sharp eyes, slowly walked towards the crowd from the rain lit by lightning. Talia felt a momentum emanating from the other party and frowned. Walking into the crowd of the Assassins' League, Hila looked at the people around her with a disdainful look. "Very good, it's worth my special search," Hila said to everyone in an irresistible tone. "Give me the crown." Looking at Hila, who was giving orders, the Assassins' League members did not move. Talia walked up to her and said, "I'm afraid you can't give orders here. This is not your territory." "Really? You look like a woman who gives orders, but you don't have any force." Hila shrugged and said, "If you choose to surrender to me, I can give you some skills to become stronger." "Submit to you? I think you must be crazy." Talia felt that the woman in front of her was simply incomprehensible. "Who are you that is qualified for me to surrender to you?" Hila replied to Talia slowly, "I am Hila, the goddess of death." As she spoke, she reached out and touched her hair. The black and macy hair did not stand up directly like before. Not feeling the change in the hairstyle, she touched it again with her hand, and the hair still did not change. "Oh, damn it!" Cursing secretly, Hila raised her head and looked at everyone. Talia was too lazy to talk to this inexplicable woman in front of her, and she directly ordered the men around her, "Catch her." After the order was issued, the people of the Assassins' League immediately stepped forward and rushed towards Hila. Facing the siege of the crowd, Hila subconsciously wanted to conjure up a dagger. As a result, she waved her hand and nothing was in her hand. No object was summoned by her. "What?" Hila was shocked, and she only heard a sound of breaking air in the air beside her ear. With a bang, her left cheek was hit by a heavy punch. She was beaten back a few steps, and she touched the blood at the corner of her mouth, her face full of disbelief. She was actually injured by a tiny human? Hila realized that she really lost her divine power, and immediately took a defensive posture with her fighting instincts without caring about anything else. With a dull bang, her arm was hit violently by a strong man, and she was directly knocked out. Falling in the mud, the slightly embarrassed Hila quickly stood up, using her combat experience to turn over and dodge the people who surrounded her. The strong sense of gap made Hila's anger rise. With a roar, she rushed forward, grabbed the arm of an Assassin League member, and threw him over her shoulder. The opponent's body hit the ground, wailed in pain, and splashed a large piece of mud. Then, she used physical skills to quickly get rid of several Assassin League assassins who rushed over. Facing more assassins rushing over, Hila, who was already prepared, retreated, turned around, twisted her waist, and kicked forward, kicking the nearest guy away. Then she stepped forward, snatched a dagger from the enemy's hand at lightning speed, and instantly stabbed two nearby. Even without divine power, she can deal with these Assassin League masters with her strong physical fitness and rich combat experience. Seeing that Hila was so difficult, Talia also joined the battlefield. She drew out her samurai sword and stabbed at the opponent fiercely. As the daughter of the Assassin Master, Talia also grew up with rigorous training since childhood, and her combat power is not comparable to that of ordinary people. Dang! The sound of the samurai sword and dagger colliding rang out. After blocking Talia's attack, Hila punched Talia. Unable to resist, Talia retreated quickly. At this time, several cars drove from behind, and the whole place was illuminated by the car lights, and the car doors opened in unison. The people who got out were all members of the Assassins League. Zizzy, a beam of electricity shot out from the weapons of the assassins who had just arrived, hitting Hila, who was unable to dodge. Hila was twitching all over from the electric shock, and the dagger in her hand immediately fell to the ground. Talia took the opportunity to attack and punched her in the chin, knocking Hila staggering. Then Talia took the opportunity to grab her arm and threw Hila to the ground with an over-the-shoulder throw. Bang! With a dull sound, the mud and water were shaken into the sky, and then fell down in a rush, as if it was raining even harder. Blood flowed from the corners of Hila's mouth, and her back was burning with pain. Unable to move, Hila's eyes were full of disbelief. She never thought that she would be defeated by a weak woman. These weak humans, she could obviously kill all of them in an instant. The assassins of the Assassins League tied up Hila and forced her to kneel in front of Talia. Hila stared at Talia with great resentment. "If I could wear the crown, you would be the one in kneeling now." As she said that, an extremely shameful feeling suddenly hit her heart, and she couldn't help but struggle hard. But because she had lost her strength and was tied up tightly, she couldn't move at all. Talia looked at the crown in surprise, thought about it, and said to Hila, "Then prove it to me." Then she waved her hand, signaling her men to step back. Talia herself also wanted to see if the other party could pick up the crown. Hila, who was released, was stunned for a while before she reacted. Standing up, she walked towards the crown with great excitement, staring at Talia. "Very good, you sent yourself to the grave with your own hands. I don't know if you are brave or stupid." Talia looked at her coldly. "You will know if you try it." Snap! The members of the Assassins League took out their pistols and pointed them at Hila. As long as there was something wrong later, they would shoot each other into sieves. Looking at everything around, Hila ignored it, sneered and walked to the crown, bent down, grabbed the horn of the crown, and lifted it up. The crown did not move. The smile on Hila's face also froze. "No. Please, not at this time." "Hurry up." Grabbing the crown with both hands, she pulled it up hard, but found that it still did not move. Looking at the people around her who were looking at her, she explained guiltily, "This is really stuck." "Hey!" Holding the horn of the crown, Hila's face flushed, but she still couldn't lift the crown. There seems to be something wrong with the gravity here. She quickly found a reason for herself and continued to pull it up hard. After a lot of trouble, Hila finally understood that it was Peter Patrick who completely deprived her of her divine power and made the crown no longer recognize her. "No!" Hila fell heavily to her knees and screamed in pain in the heavy rain. "Patrick, you can't do this to me." "Achoo!" Peter sneezed and rubbed his nose. He didn't know that Hila was shouting at him to kneel down. At this time, he was flipping through an invitation letter. "Thank you for the reward from the top elbow master. Thank you for your support. It's the end of the month. Please give me a monthly ticket. Double the monthly ticket. If you get 3,000, I will immediately give you more chapters." Chapter 263, Attending the Engagement Party, Clark is in danger. The heavy rain fell, soaking Hila's body. Hila knelt on the ground, lowered her head, and lost all her spirit in an instant. "No, Padraic, you can't do this to me, you can't." Hila made a sound that only she could hear. "What should we do?" Leader, seeing Hila kneeling in front of the crown, her subordinates asked Talia. Talia looked at the kneeling opponent, hesitated, and said to her subordinates, "Catch her and take her away." She always felt that the woman in front of her was not simple. Maybe she could be of some use. "Padraic," he repeated the name that Hila called out in a low voice. Talia always felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. "Padraic Farm." "Achoo!" Peter sneezed again. "Dad, what's wrong? Do you have a cold?" Star-Lord asked Peter with concern. "With a physique like mine, I shouldn't get sick." Peter put down the invitation in his hand and said to Star-Lord, "Maybe someone is missing me." Star-Lord was silent for a moment, not knowing how to respond to his father's words. Soon he saw the invitation on the table, and immediately changed the subject and asked Peter, "Dad, whose invitation is this?" "Lex." Peter handed the invitation to Star-Lord and said, "It's from Lex Luthor. He said he was going to hold an engagement party, so he invited us." "Lex." Star-Lord took the invitation and asked Peter, "Dad, are you familiar with the Luthor family?" "Lex Luthor also invited you to his engagement. We had some intersections before. I helped Lex when he was a child," Peter said casually. "It was a long time ago. I didn't expect this guy to still remember me." Looking at the sunlight shining in from the window, Peter was a little emotional. The bald boy he had seen before, the biggest enemy of the future Superman, was about to get engaged. He was still single now. Sighing, looking at his face in the mirror, Peter said with emotion, "Time makes people grow old." Star-Lord, looking at his father's unbelievably young face, Star-Lord thought to himself that, "Dad, you are too Versailles." He suspected that when he entered the midlife crisis, Peter would still have such a face. When he goes out with Peter, he thinks some people will think he is the father. Quickly getting rid of this rebellious idea, Star-Lord coughed and turned his thoughts to Lex's wedding invitation. "Well, Dad, Uncle Kent said that the Lex family is insidious and cunning, and we should not make close friends with him. Star-Lord said to Peter, Uncle Kent doesn't seem to like Luthor. That's because Leno Luthor is really a jerk sometimes, so it's normal that he is not liked by others. He was about to say something else when Thor's voice came from the living room. You idiot. Do you know who I am? I am Thor, the god of thunder. You idiot. You are obviously fighting like a piece of shit, but you keep chattering. Peter frowned and walked out, only to see Thor wearing headphones and arguing with someone in the game. Hey, listen, if you don't quit the game right now, I'm going to fly to your house, rush into the basement where you're hiding, rip off your arm, and stuff it up your ass. What? You said you were in Gotham, and I couldn't find you. I tell you, I can pull you out even if you're in the sewer. Thor got more and more excited, and his threats became louder and louder. Soon the other party was scared to tears, and Thor became even more proud. Go cry to your dad, little bastard, Thor. Peter stopped Thor from scolding his teammates and even thinking about the real Thor offline, frowning at the new game console. Where did you get the game console? Don't you still owe me $5,000? Where did you get the money? Thor heard Peter's voice, took off his headphones, coughed, and said to Peter, Did Azu lend me money to buy it? When did you get so close? Peter asked puzzledly. We talked about some topics and felt that we had a common language, so, Thor and Azu had beer and father before, and their relationship warmed up a lot. He shrugged his shoulders. So, he lent me some US dollars really? Peter sat on the sofa and asked Thor to turn off the TV. Thor, we need to talk. He brought Thor to the farm to work, but this guy seemed to be more relaxed than himself. Did he invite an ancestor? You are the god of thunder, but you seem to be escaping from life now. Escape? No, I just want to relax. You know, Mr. Padraic, a lot has happened recently, and I'm a little tired. Thor twisted his body unnaturally. Peter vaguely saw that he had a little fat on his belly. Peter's eyebrows moved and asked him, Is it because of Loki's death? Is it the death of those Asgard soldiers? Or your sister's betrayal? No, it's not this reason. Thor firmly denied that he was addicted to games and beer because of the death of his brother and fellow tribesman. Then why did you give up the throne of Asgard and choose to be an ordinary person on the farm? Peter asked him. Because Hela's behavior made you question the meaning of the throne, right? Thor was stunned for a moment. He was a little speechless. Peter's words spoke to his true feelings. Patting Thor on the shoulder, Peter continued, You must understand, Thor, life is about climbing uphill, it is about struggle, it is about constantly overcoming dangers and obstacles. Thor nodded, I know, I'm actually okay with life, I just want to be a prodigal son for once. Seeing that the other party was not interested, Peter didn't plan to say more. Very good, Thor prodigal son, turn off the game console now, go to the backyard and move the crops to the barn. Working is important. If you don't exploit him, your $5,000 will go down the drain. Okay, Thor stood up and walked to the backyard. But soon he stopped and said to Peter, Can you take me to the party, Mr. Patrick? What party? Peter frowned and looked at him. I heard what you and Star-Lord said. You received an invitation to a party. There must be a lot of delicious wine there, Thor said confidently. Seeing the other party's drunkard behavior, Peter sighed helplessly. It seems that the chicken soup he just drank was in vain. Should I send this guy back another day? He finally understood why this guy was driven away by the Guardians of the Galaxy. Weekend. Peter took Azu, Clark, Star-Lord and Thor to attend the engagement ceremony held by Lex Luthor. Because Loki was grounded, he was at home with Nick Fury to guard the farm. Metropolis. In a church by the sea, Peter and Azu entered and met the host of the engagement ceremony, Lex Luthor. After seeing Peter, Lex said a few words to the guests and came with his fiancée. Mr. Padraic, I'm glad you're here. Lex, dressed in a black suit, shook hands with Peter and introduced the tall blonde beauty beside him to Peter. This is Helen, my fiancée. Hello, Mr. Padraic. I often hear Lex mention you. Helen shook hands with Peter gracefully. Hello. Peter looked at her and said to her, Congratulations, I remember when I was 8 years old, I was stared at by a wild beast in the wild. At that time, it was Mr. Padraic who saved me, Lex said to his fiancée. I still remember it clearly, after so many years. As he spoke, he cast a surprised look at Peter. Mr. Padraic has not changed at all, which makes me remember this memory as if it was yesterday. Maybe I was born late to mature, Peter replied perfunctorily. After a round of greetings, Lex left to prepare for the engagement ceremony. After the church activities ended, everyone came to the hotel prepared by Lex to attend the dinner. Standing on the balcony of the hotel, Clark leaned on the railing and looked at the sea in the distance. Peter walked to the balcony and saw Clark looking out at the sea. "Clark, Godfather." Clark turned around and saw Peter standing in front of him. "What are you thinking about?" Holding the juice, Peter took a sip and asked him. "I wonder if there are really mermaids in the sea." "Oh, are you obsessed with the sea? Or did you have an idea about mermaids because you saw Lex getting married?" Peter put down the juice cup and said to Clark, "I heard a lieutenant in the Navy once said that there will always be one soldier he trained who will be obsessed with the sea. They said they saw an angel, then jumped down, and never came back, lost themselves in the sea, and there are all kinds of creatures in the sea that we have never seen. Don't forget, Clark, you still have Lana, don't be tempted by these beings." Peter knew that there were not only mermaids and fishmen in the underwater world, but also Atlanteans. It is estimated that Clark's supervision saw some species in the distance and deep sea. Hearing Peter say that he still has Lana, Clark touched his nose awkwardly. He felt that his hope for Lana and him was getting slimmer and slimmer. Lex is already engaged, and he doesn't know when he will get engaged to Lana. After the dinner, because it was too late, Peter and his group did not return to the town, but rested in the hotel for a night and went back tomorrow. Late in the night, 12 o'clock. Clark left the hotel alone and wanted to go swimming in the sea. After entering the sea, Clark swam forward like a torpedo and soon left the coastline. After an unknown amount of time, Clark emerged from the water with a splash and suddenly found that he could no longer see the shore. Taking a deep breath, he was about to swim back when he heard a strange sound. It was very quiet at first, like the sound of an insect, and then it became louder and louder, and the sound kept getting louder in his mind. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 264, The person Clark met turned out to be a fishman. Clark calmed himself down and listened carefully to the strange sound. However, before he had listened for a few seconds, the sound disappeared without a trace. Taking a deep breath, Clark dived underwater. When he was on the farm, he liked to surf on the lake by stepping on stones. Once, he was scolded by his father for sliding after removing the wheels of a tractor. Now Clark tried to surf with his body. Submerging into the water, Clark kept swimming downwards. He adapted to the underwater pressure and began to try to breathe in the water. After diving to a certain depth, Clark stopped and used his supervision to look at the dark environment around him. His sight easily penetrated the dark abyss environment and saw the underwater scenery clearly. All around was quiet, and all kinds of creatures that he had never seen before appeared in his sight. Deep in the coral, fish with a faint halo flashed in front of him. "I guess Krypton should be as beautiful as here," Clark said to himself. For some reason, he suddenly connected the underwater scene with his hometown of Krypton, which he had never seen before. Perhaps both are equally full of miracles and beauty. After imagining the Krypton he had never seen before, Clark dived upwards and prepared to return to the hotel. Splash! Clark poked his head out, the bright moonlight shone on the sea, and there was a quiet atmosphere all around. Not far from Clark, a huge cargo ship was parked in the sea. Fishermen from the nearby fishing town were fishing with headlights on. "We have been waiting here all day, and no one has taken the bait." The old fisherman Hanks put his feet on the side of the boat and said to the other people fishing next to him, "Is there something wrong here? I remember there are still a lot of fish in the sea area. We got a lot here last time." The fisherman next to him joked to him, "Maybe they smelled your stinky feet and were scared away by you, haha." The laughter of other fishermen next to him rang out. Old Hanks also laughed. "My feet are not as stinky as yours." Just as several people were joking, one of the burly fishermen suddenly felt something was hooked. The fishing line was instantly tightened, and he was pulled forward and staggered. "Oh my God! I caught it. This thing is really big." As he said that, he quickly stood up and pulled the fishing rod back with his rough arms, trying to pull up the big fish that was hooked. Seeing that his companion had a big fish hooked, the other fisherman looked over. But the next second, the other party was pulled forward by the big fish. He lost his balance and was pulled over the fence and fell into the sea with a scream. Bang! The sound of falling into the water sounded heavily. The sudden change scared Old Hanks and others. Damn! What happened? Old Hanks and others immediately ran to the side of the boat where the fisherman fell into the water and looked down. Did you see him? Old Hanks asked hurriedly. No, quick! Throw the lifeboat down. Old Hanks immediately took out the lifeboat and prepared to throw it into the water. Although they all knew how to swim, this was the sea, and they didn't want their friends to have any accidents. As the few people were anxiously waiting, a bubble suddenly rose on the sea surface, followed by countless blood foam. The pungent smell of blood entered everyone's nose. And it was mixed with a foul smell, as if a corpse that had been rotting for a long time, exuding a disgusting smell. In the rising blood bubbles, the baseball cap of the fisherman who was dragged down slowly floated up. What is that thing? The young fisherman swallowed his saliva and saw a black shadow flashing under the water. Leave here. Quick! The experienced Old Hanks immediately realized what happened. There was no time to mourn. He immediately gave an order. While retreating, he shouted to others, Karen, hurry up, go to the cabin and get the revolver. Everyone woke up from their dreams when they heard the voice of Old Hanks, and hurried to the cabin. Splash! Before the fisherman ran to the cabin, the hideous monster jumped onto the deck from the dark sea with a boom. With a bright moonlight, Old Hanks took a deep breath after seeing the monster's face. The hideous and terrifying fishman was covered with a smooth and greasy shell. The fishman's body had vague human features, but his head was that of a fish, with huge, bulging eyeballs that never closed, and gills that kept trembling on both sides of his neck. The most frightening thing was the densely packed teeth in his mouth. Old Hanks felt goosebumps all over his body just by looking at it. Seeing the fishman rushing towards the few people, Old Hanks didn't care about anything else, and grabbed the harpoon next to him and stabbed the fishman closest to him. Swish! The harpoon only stabbed the air, and the fishman easily dodged it by turning sideways. Before he could react, Old Hanks was hit hard into the sea by the fishman's slap. In the pitch-black darkness, the cold and salty seawater, and the screams of fear instantly swept over him. Struggling in the blurry water, Old Hanks seemed to see the body of the fisherman who had just fallen. The hideous corpse smiled. The mud slid out from between his sharp teeth. The opponent opened his mouth wide, and then it kept growing, and finally the lower jaw cracked with a snap sound, and suddenly broke. At this moment, in the eyes of Old Hanks, the opponent's mouth seemed to have turned into a howling tunnel, approaching him at a very fast speed. The strong stimulation made him sober up all of a sudden. This was not a corpse, but the fishman who beat him into the sea. Just when he was terrified and thought he was going to be eaten by the fishman, he suddenly saw a dazzling light. Old Hank squinted his eyes and saw a woman covered with green scales, with wine-red hair and white light in her eyes. Ah! The red-haired woman swept towards the fishman with the water. The fishman was hit on the head by the red-haired woman's fist under the sea, and there was a bang sound. The whole fishman flew backwards. Old Hanks, who was staring at all this, thought he was dreaming? No. It was definitely not a dream. The feeling of being drowned was not fake. Just when he was doubting his life, the red-haired woman swam over and grabbed his shoulders. Plop. A sound of breaking water sounded, and Old Hanks was thrown from the sea to the deck of the cargo ship by the red-haired woman. Cough cough, he coughed violently, breathing the air greedily, and the feeling of surviving a disaster suddenly rose from the bottom of his heart. Bang! 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 The sound of bullets was heard. The fishermen who took the pistols from the cabin attacked the fishermen who were scrambling to climb onto the fishing boat. The fishermen who were hit had strong scales, so the bullets caused little damage to them. Bang! The fisherman who was holding the pistol and shooting was pierced in the chest by the claws, and then the fisherman's bloody mouth bit his neck. A lot of blood spurted out immediately. Go to the cabin. The red-haired woman jumped onto the deck and shouted to the fisherman. With her eyes glowing white, she controlled the water with both hands and hit the fisherman approaching her. Splash! The red-haired woman controlled the water freely, releasing a powerful force, smashing the fisherman on the boat into the sea. She not only has the ability to control water, but also can control the shape, density and hardness of water. Bang! Facing the roaring monster rushing up, the red-haired woman dodged sideways and punched, and the air instantly made a bang, and the fishermen she hit were directly knocked out. In addition to having a powerful ability to control water, she also has super strength born to adapt to life under the sea. After knocking down a fisherman, the red-haired woman continued to control the water to attack the fisherman. Although the fishermen who climbed onto the boat were quickly dealt with by her, There were still countless fishmen climbing onto the boat. Soon, she was surrounded by the army of fishmen. The fishermen hiding in the cabin looked through the small holes at the monsters on the deck roaring and drooling at the corners of their mouths, rushing towards the red-haired woman fearlessly, and trembled with fear. Old Hanks finally calmed down at this time. He suppressed a fear in his heart and comforted the fishermen in the cabin. Outside the cabin, just as the red-haired woman was struggling, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a figure jumping out of the sea. Clark, who used his supervision to see the fishmen attack, rushed over as fast as he could and caught up with the scene. Although he didn't know why the fishmen and mermaids appeared in the sea, he did not hesitate and immediately launched an attack on these fishmen who were killing ordinary people. Clark's joining quickly reversed the situation. Using super speed to move to the side of the fishman, Clark grabbed a fishman who tried to attack him and smashed it heavily on the deck. Blood splattered and the fishman made a dull sound when he was thrown. Then, Clark released his thermal vision forward again. Avoiding the red-haired woman's thermal vision, he shot at the fishman, and the fishmen who couldn't dodge were knocked down one after another by him. The fishmen who had already clung to the side of the fishing boat seemed to have received the signal and stopped attacking. Instead, they jumped into the sea and disappeared without a trace in an instant. After the fishmen retreated, the red-haired woman breathed a sigh of relief. Looking at the blood and mess on the deck, she looked up at Clark. She didn't expect to meet such an unusual human. After hesitating for a moment, she stepped in the blood and slowly walked forward and asked Clark, "Who are you, Clark?" Padre Kent. Clark was also shocked by the figure and temperament of the woman in front of him. He asked the other party, "Are you a mermaid?" As soon as he said it, Clark wanted to give himself a slap. What nonsense is he talking about? No, I'm Mara Zabel. Chapter 265, Mara appears, Death Town. Just call me Mara. Mara frowned and looked at the gradually calming sea. She did not chase after the fishmen, but continued to ask Clark, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Clark was stunned for a moment, and was relieved to see that the other party was not angry because of his previous question. Then he coughed and replied, "I was swimming nearby, and I rushed over when I heard the cry for help." While answering Mara, he became curious about the identity of the woman in front of him. Being able to use water to attack, and being able to punch an adult-sized, extremely ferocious fishman away, such a person is definitely not an ordinary human. Is she also an alien? Although we have repelled them temporarily, there are more fishmen than you think. They may come again. For your safety, you should leave here. After glancing at Clark, Mara turned and jumped from the boat into the sea. With a splash, the water was swept away and then returned to calm again. Watching the other parties back as she left, Clark had many doubts in his heart. Do mermaids really exist in this world? There are also ugly fishmen. As he thought about it, he cast his eyes on the blood and broken fishmen's bodies on the deck. The complete fishmen's bodies were taken away by the fishmen who surged up, so there were no complete bodies left on the boat. Taking a deep breath, Clark calmed down his restless mood and decided to leave. He jumped off the boat and jumped into the sea, and soon disappeared. When the surroundings became quiet, Old Hanks and others came out of the cabin tremblingly. As a result, the scene they saw was a deck covered with blood and broken limbs. The two people who had saved them before had disappeared. Looking at the bloody scene in front of them, several people were shocked and speechless for a long time. "Quick! Get out of this damn place!" Old Hanks reacted first and shouted excitedly to the fishermen. The next day, early in the morning, Peter drove Azu and others back to Smallville. "Are you okay, Clark?" Peter asked Clark, who was sitting in the back seat. Clark, who was a little absent-minded, was stunned when he heard Peter's words. "Yes, I'm fine," Clark said with a guilty conscience. After experiencing the fishman and the mermaid last night, he hadn't slept much since he came back. "Really?" Peter looked at him with suspicion, "but you don't look fine. Your dark circles are as obvious as panda eyes. Are you worried about something?" He knew that Clark went out swimming last night, but he didn't know that he had fought with monsters and met the Queen of the Sea. "I guess Clark may have insomnia," Azu in the back seat said to Peter. "This is normal. I also have insomnia." "You also have insomnia? John?" Peter asked curiously. "A heartless boy like you also has insomnia?" "Because it's a change of environment. If you're on the farm, you can hear all the sounds coming in the night at night," Zeus said to Peter. "Crickets rub their legs and chirp like crazy car alarms. Frogs are like angry city buses, and owl killers, a series of rapid calls, wishing that people would silence them. And then everything starts again. It may make you upset at first, but after a long time, I found that I can't live without this sound. Zhu told Peter his true thoughts. If possible, he even hopes that he can fall asleep listening to this sound for the rest of his life. The farm is just your first stop. You will eventually have your own life and will always get used to other sounds. Peter shook his head and said to Zhu and the others. No, Dad, I won't leave. Zhu said to Peter, I won't leave the farm. Star-Lord also quickly expressed his loyalty. Me too, Dad, really? Don't you want to go to college? Peter moved his eyebrows and asked the two. Uncle Kent didn't go to college. He gave up the chance to go to college and returned to the farm with Aunt Martha, as Zhu talked about Clark's father. He pushed Clark's shoulder and asked him, Am I right, Clark? Huh? Clark, who had been thinking about something, only reacted after Azu pushed him. Clark, who didn't hear what they said clearly, nodded in confusion. Yes, I know about this. Star-Lord next to him added, because of this, Clark's grandfather almost broke off relations with Aunt Martha. Until now, his grandfather has never come to see them once. Clark said last time that his grandfather didn't come when his parents got married. Okay, that's enough gossip about Clark's family. Peter interrupted Star-Lord's next speech. He suspected that if he didn't stop him, the gossipy Star-Lord would tell Clark's 3 generations of ancestors. Looking back at Clark, who seemed a little absent-minded, Peter was about to continue asking him something. Who? A deafening snoring sound suddenly came from the back seat of the car. Thor's snoring almost drowned out the roar of the car's engine. Peter's face immediately turned bad. This guy drank so much at the dinner last night that he fell asleep as soon as he got in the car. In this state, let alone working, he couldn't even keep up with the food. Peter couldn't help but sigh. He no longer expected Thor to work. As long as he didn't get drunk and destroy the farm, he would be fine. After a journey full of snoring, the car drove into Patrick's farm. After getting off the car, Peter took the letter from the mailbox and went into the living room. He greeted Nick Fury and sat at the round table in the living room. He flipped through the newspaper that the newsboy delivered in the morning. A piece of news in the newspaper attracted his attention. A fishing boat was attacked by an unknown creature in the waters east of Boston. The police believed that this was a hijacking and murder case committed by pirates, but the parties involved claimed that they were attacked by creatures that looked like fishmen. Reading the news above, Peter frowned slightly. Mermen, aren't they mermaids? He thought Clark had a romantic encounter with a mermaid last night. Unexpectedly, it wasn't a mermaid with a beautiful singing voice, but a ferocious merman. No wonder Clark was listless today. It turned out that there was a shadow in his heart. There is an ice treasure box in his treasure house. If he releases this thing into the Atlantic Ocean, can he freeze the so-called Atlantis and the 7 kingdoms? Putting down the newspaper in his hand, Peter began to consider the success rate of this matter. In the end, because this idea was too crazy, he threw it out of his mind. Whether it is Atlantis or mermen, these are the affairs of these people in the sea, and have nothing to do with him. Lowering his head, Peter cast his eyes on his watch. The watch is getting closer and closer to the end of a circle. According to Peter's previous experience, it is less than a month before the next baby is born. According to the future that Clark saw, the probability of this baby being born is a girl. I just don't know which father is worried. Peter stood by the window, staring at the bright sunlight outside, and frowned slightly. He had no experience in raising a baby girl. Should he ask Zora next door to help take care of her? No. The other party is like a child who has not grown up, and she is pregnant. How to take care of her? Just as he was thinking about the future life of his eldest daughter, who was about to be born, Clark walked up to him and asked hesitantly, Godfather, can I ask you a question? Peter turned around, looked at Clark, who was full of worries, and nodded. Of course, Godfather. Does Atlantis really exist in this world? Atlantis? Peter was stunned when he heard Clark's question. He stared at him and asked knowingly, why are you suddenly concerned about the existence of Atlantis, Clark? Clark put down the book in his hand and said hesitantly, I searched on the internet. There is a professor who has been swearing that Atlantis has always existed. He proposed many theories and said that the Atlanteans have always been around us. They are fish people and mermaids, but it seems that the only evidence of his argument is some traces mentioned in Plato's last works, Critias and Timaeus. Clark didn't know whether he should believe it or not. Godfather, you said that you always know what you want to know, so I want to ask you, Peter, do you think I am a prophet? Peter coughed and was about to tell him that he was not omnipotent and could not tell him the location of Atlantis better than Plato. But before he could finish his words, Thor turned on the TV. Peter was about to scold the abandoned house to turn off the TV, and the live news broadcast from the TV attracted Clark's attention. The live news broadcast was about an accident in the town called Tanine. Not only were there police and reporters at the scene, but the Coast Guard also showed up. Reporters reported on the disappearances in Tanine town, where many residents near the sea disappeared. In addition, more than a dozen human remains were found outside Tanine town. The scene was filled with a bloody smell. What is this? Clark was stunned as he watched the news on TV. He immediately thought of what happened on the ship last night. Could it be that those fish monsters attacked this Tanine town? Clark's mood became tense. If that's true, he has to stop those monsters from continuing to attack humans. Thank you readers for your monthly tickets. I received a lot of monthly tickets. I'll update the story tomorrow for you readers. 90 Degree Bow. Chapter 266, Azu gets angry with Nick Fury. Marrow awakens the human soul. Clark, are you okay? Peter looked away from the TV and asked Clark. Clark turned his head and said nervously, I think I know who did it. What is it? Peter was a little surprised. What do you know, Clark? Clark hesitated and told Peter the whole story of last night. After listening to the other party's story, Peter fell into deep thought. Mara, the Queen of the Sea? He didn't expect that the other party would appear so early. Since the Queen of the Sea has already appeared, how long will it take for the King of the Sea to appear? Peter felt a little regretful at this time. When he was in the Black Robe world, he should have brought the Deep Sea. In the Black Robe world, that guy, apart from playing glue with the octopus, flattered the motherland. If this guy is brought into the DC world, he can be sent to the sea. Whether the other party is trying to find out the intelligence of the Seven Kingdoms or to retrieve the artifact of the Trident of the Sea King, it can play a role. Godfather, Clark interrupted his thoughts, I want to go to Beach Rock Town to investigate. If it is really those fishmen who did it, we have to stop him. Yeah, Peter knew Clark's temper and did not stop him. He nodded and said to Clark, let Director Fury accompany you. He is very experienced in such things. In addition, if anything happens, remember to call me in time. As a senior agent, he believed that Nick Fury should be quite experienced in dealing with government departments. Even if he changed the world, there should be no big problem. In addition, this guy's escape technique is also first class. He was set up by Hydra Shield, but he was able to escape, and even faked his death to get away. If Clark can learn a few escape skills from him, he will not be so easily controlled by Bruce in the future. Okay, Clark did not refuse. With Nick Fury by his side, he felt much more at ease. At this time, Nick Fury, who was being talked about by the two, was confronting Azu on the farm. Hey, kid, you'd better give me Captain America's shield. Give it back to you. Yes, what's the problem? Of course, Azu would not give back what he had got. He put his hands on his waist, waved his hands, and exhaled with a puff. Stop it, what's the point of taking this thing back? Captain America's body was found in the Arctic Ocean. He will be resurrected soon. This is his weapon, are you sure? Azu widened his eyes in astonishment. Didn't you say he was a white man in the 1930s? Are you sure he won't beat you when he resurrects? He will go crazy when he sees a black man as his boss. Nick Fury almost blurted out fuck you, but he finally held back. But Azu's next words made his face turn black charcoal in an instant. Also, you actually elected a black president. Think about it. When you wake up, tell him, hey, Captain America, we have a broad president. He 100% thinks it's a crude joke about the president. Broad originally means broad, and in slang it also refers to a woman's casual private life, and you elected him twice. Listening to Azu's naked racial night, Nick Fury wanted to shit this guy down. But considering that if he lost his temper, he would not only be unable to beat him, but also be pierced with 2 small holes in his body, he had to bear it. You are full of prejudice against black people, John. Nick Fury calmed down his temper. You live in the 21st century, not the 20th century, and Captain America is not a racist. Facing Nick Fury's accusation against him, Azu certainly did not admit it. No, I'm not prejudiced against black people. I just think most of them are sick and want to be superior to others. Azu shook his finger and said, there is only one kind of person in this world who can be superior to others, and that's me. Azu was not modest at all. I am different. I am my father's proudest son, and the man who will inherit everything from my father in the future. You know what, John? Nick Fury suddenly interrupted him and said, you are actually quite suitable for the Captain America uniform, but the A on your head is not America, but asshole. Being called an asshole by Nick Fury, Zhu didn't care about respecting the elders. He walked over and wanted to press Nick Fury's head down and make him apologize to him. But he stopped soon, because Peter was walking towards him from the living room. John, I think I heard someone say superior to others. Peter cast an unfriendly look at him. Being glared at by Peter, Zhu's previous anger immediately disappeared, and his face was immediately filled with smiles. I was discussing the racial issues in the United States with Director Fury. I said freedom and equality are always superior, Zhu replied to Peter with a fake smile. Nick Fury, who was standing next to him, was stunned when he saw Zhu's change of face and shamelessness. This kid is really flexible. He was arrogant at first, but he became honest when he saw Peter. Director Fury, did he really say that? Peter turned to Nick Fury and asked. I don't know. Maybe you two can discuss who is the one who doesn't respect equality. Damn it. Nick Fury didn't curse out the whole sentence and turned to leave. He was afraid that if he stayed here, he would fight with Zhu and then be beaten to death by the other party accidentally. Hey, Director Fury? Nick Fury was stopped by Clark before he took 2 steps. Can I invite you to go somewhere? What do you want to do? He was now afraid that Clark was up to something. After a conversation with Zhu, he was worried that Clark was also a racial knight. Clark didn't know what the other party was thinking. After he explained his need for help, Nick immediately understood. Of course, Nick Fury nodded in agreement. It was just right that he could collect some biological information that was not available in his own world and bring it back to SHIELD for research. In the afternoon, Nick Fury drove Clark to Tanayan Town. It seems that not only the Coast Guard, but also the FBI and the local police have been dispatched. It won't be easy for us to sneak in. Pushing the car door open and getting out, Nick Fury looked at the helicopter flying overhead and uttered the curse word that he had never finished saying, fuck. At the same time, Mara had already landed. Sitting on the reef in the sea, she looked at herself in the reflection. Soon the reflection disappeared, the water surface began to shake constantly, and finally jumped out of the water and condensed into a human posture. Mara, why don't you go to carry out your mission? The human form formed by the condensation of seawater questioned in his tone. The human condensed from seawater is her father, the king of Zabel. Zabel is a deserted underwater city-state. The residents there have passed down from generation to generation that Zabel was attacked by Atlantis in ancient times. And the Atlanteans slaughtered the ancestors of the Zabel people. Mara was the assassin sent to Atlantis to assassinate the king, with the purpose of avenging her ancestors. But after days of investigation, she found that the Atlanteans did not know the existence of Zabel. And Arthur Curry, the future king of Atlantis, who was assassinated, is now just the son of a lighthouse keeper, and is not a bad person. She had observed him for 2 days before and knew that he was not a villain. Dad, we can't do that. We don't have any hatred. It may be a misunderstanding, Mara said to her father. Besides, I found a large number of trench people attacking humans last night. They live in the deep sea most of the time. Generally speaking, it is impossible for them to take the initiative to attack humans. The fishmen who attacked humans last night are the trench people, one of the 7 kingdoms under the sea. The trench people are brutal and cannibalistic by nature. They are not controlled by anyone and almost just act on instinct. You don't have to worry about so much, Mara, just complete your mission, but, I am your father. If you have any rebellious thoughts, you are a traitor. Traitors must die. Do you know what will happen to you, father? Mara hugged her legs and lowered her head sadly. But soon she raised her head and her eyes became firm. Wrong things must be corrected. I won't do that. Splash! The condensed form of Mara's father's seawater collapsed in an instant, and the seawater fell down in a sloppy manner. Mara was wondering why her father suddenly disappeared, and a voice came from behind her. Hey, hello, a thin girl said behind her. Mara stood up and concealed her abnormal expression. She looked at the other person with a stern face. Who are you? What's the matter? Mara, who grew up in the sea since childhood, has some kindness towards humans, but is also quite wary of humans. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. The girl held a school bag and said nervously, we met in the grocery store. Mara remembered that she had dealt with 2 thieves who wanted to touch customers in the store before. So, I just want to help you, the girl said as she opened her backpack, which was full of snacks. Mara wanted to buy snacks in the store before, but she had to put them back because she had no money. The girl saw this and bought snacks for her. "Call me when you finish eating these. My name is Jennifer. My phone number is in the bag. We can meet again then." The girl handed the backpack to Mara and waved to leave. "Why?" Mara stared at the backpack in her hand and asked the girl. "I don't know, maybe I just want you to know that not all people in this world are bad." Mara was stunned for a while, and a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. "You are right, not all humans are bad." She suddenly had a different understanding of humans. Chapter 267, You two went across the sea and came back? Tanayan Town. On the dock, the police were detecting bloodstains and various remains at the scene. Yachts and speedboats were patrolling back and forth on the sea, and the police and the government were trying to find some useful clues. "So, Director Fury, how did you convince them to let you in?" Clark followed Nick Fury and entered the scene. He was very curious about what means Nick Fury used to get the officials to let them in. "It's simple. I told them that I'm a federal agent." As he said that, Nick Fury took out an ID and put it on his chest. "This is my ID and shield. It still works here. Do you know what this shows?" "What?" "This shows that no matter which world, serious and responsible guys are a minority." As the two talked, they walked to the dock. There were divers under the dock, salvaging something. Clark walked to the dock and looked into the depths of the sea. "What are you looking at?" Nick Fury asked him puzzledly. "I'm trying to see if there might be any clues in the deeper sea." Clark said that he was using his supervision to observe the distant sea. What did you see?" "Nothing." "Then it seems that your eyes are not omnipotent." As he was talking, with a splash, the diver picked up a wrapped object from the water under the dock. The nearby police hurried over and worked together to move these things up. Clark and Nick Fury also looked at the things they fished out curiously. "This looks like a cocoon." Some police believe that the light gray existence in front of them was a large cocoon of some unknown creature. Clark used his perspective eyes to look inside the cocoon and found that there were still living things inside. At the same time, he suddenly noticed a dangerous breath in the sea, which was quickly attacking this side. Clark immediately turned his head to look at the sea surface, and saw countless fishmen appearing under the sea, rushing towards the shore frantically. Realizing that something was wrong, he immediately shouted to the people present, "Everyone, leave quickly, they are coming." Before he finished speaking, with a bang, the calmness of the sea surface was broken, and water splashed all around. Countless hideous fishmen rushed out of the coast and pounced fiercely on the crowd. "Fuck!" Nick Fury hurriedly retreated and took out his pistol to shoot at the fishmen rushing towards him. Clark stood there, watching the monsters rushing up, not caring about his identity being exposed. "Chief Fury, don't get too far away from me." "Fuck!" Nick cursed softly, moved to Clark's side, and continued to use his pistol to shoot at the wave of fishmen. Clark swung his fist and knocked away the fishmen approaching him. Seeing Clark's great power, Nick Fury, who couldn't see the situation on the seabed, relaxed a little. On the other side, Clark instantly came to a female police officer who was attacked by a fishman. After easily blocking the fishman's claws, Clark lightly kicked the fishman in front of him and kicked him dozens of meters away. After saving the female police officer, he continued to attack the wave of fishmen. Bang! 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 Nick Fury kept pulling the trigger and shooting at the surging fishmen. Damn it! With a curse, Nick Fury kicked the fishman who rushed towards him hard, bending his leg. The latter knelt on one knee due to imbalance. "You damn monster, you messed with the wrong person, you know." Nick Fury quickly approached the fishman and kicked the kneeling fishman in the chest, kicking him away. When the dock was in chaos, Mara also rushed over. Seeing the fishman attacking humans, Mara's eyes turned cold and controlled the water to attack the fishman. At the same time, she grabbed a fishman's arm and broke it. Crack! The fishman's arm was broken, and Mara controlled the water to pierce into the other's body, and blood spurted out. Roar! The fishman roared in pain and fell to the ground. After killing a fishman, Mara's eyes turned wide and continued to control the water to attack the fishman. As the sound of the water piercing the air rang out, a large number of fishmen were hit by the water on the ground. The attacked fishmen fell backwards and hit the dock violently, making a loud noise. The ground of the entire Tanayan town shook violently, as if an earthquake had occurred. The air made an explosion roar, and the sound of water hitting violently shook the earth. Clark was shocked to see Mara appear. He didn't expect that the woman who appeared last night would appear again today. Suppressing the shock in his heart, Clark grabbed a fishman's head and pressed it hard to the ground. At the same time, the police and Coast Guard members at the scene also reacted, took out heavy firepower weapons from the police car and launched a counterattack. The fishermen who had originally had the upper hand were immediately beaten back. Seeing that their side had suffered heavy casualties, the fishermen stopped their offensive and began to retreat like yesterday. Countless fishermen jumped into the sea and quickly disappeared in front of everyone. The dock, which was originally full of fighting sounds, suddenly became quiet. Clark did not chase them. He looked at the fleeing fishermen and exhaled. Where in the ocean did these monsters come from? Full of doubts, he asked Nick Fury. No one cares where they come from. As long as these monsters are gone, the people here will be thankful. Nick Fury shook his head, looked at the shocking wound on his arm, and took a deep breath. Only then did Clark notice that Nick Fury was injured. He hurried over to check on him. Are you okay, Chief Fury? It's okay, I won't die. I've been on the battlefield before, and these are nothing. On the other side, the police who survived the disaster finally reacted when the fishermen disappeared completely. The joy after defeating the monsters made everyone couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. I bet I shot and killed more. I saw some fishermen eat their own kind. Did you see that? The cry of this thing sounds like a seal. By the way, did you see the superpowers used by the two people over there just now? They are just like aliens, the policeman started to discuss. After the policeman in charge of the scene saw the fishermen retreat, he used the radio to order his men, let our people come out of the sea, leave the helicopter to patrol in the air, and kill any movement under the sea immediately. You'd better not shoot into the sea. He was interrupted as soon as he finished speaking. Mara, who was dressed in green and had red hair, walked towards the policeman in charge of the scene and frowned and said to him, I advise you not to do this. The other party also saw Mara's incredible ability just now, but he did not back down and asked him, are you worried about killing innocent people? No, some of the missing people may still be alive. What evidence do you have? Of course I have. Mara walked to the cocoon that was fished out by the diver and tore it open. This is the cocoon made by those creatures. As the cocoon was torn open, water splashed out from it, and a golden retriever was pulled out by Mara. Although a little depressed, the golden retriever was undoubtedly still alive. A dog. Clark was also stunned by the scene in front of him. Humans and dogs are just food to them. Mara stood up and said to everyone, maybe there are survivors. Clark nodded. He looked at the golden retriever, and then looked at the only relatively intact fisherman corpse lying on the ground next to him. Nick Fury put away his pistol and also looked at the fisherman corpse. We should take the fisherman corpse away, he whispered to Clark. Those people have noticed you. If we don't leave, you will be locked up by them as a research subject. Leave now, kid, and take the fisherman corpse away, but I don't think we should steal things. He was a little resistant to Nick asking him to steal the fisherman corpse. Are you stupid? Boy, you should understand that this is not stealing, but just letting someone more capable solve the problem. Looking at Nick Fury's serious eyes, Clark finally gave in. He activated his super speed and moved towards the fishman's body. The next second, under the gaze of the astonished police around, the fishman's body suddenly disappeared. And Nick Fury also took advantage of the chaos to leave the scene. Outside of Tanayan Town. Bang! Clark put the fishman's body in the trunk of the car and sat in the passenger seat. Nick Fury started the car and stepped on the brakes as soon as he started. The car shook violently. A figure blocked the road in front of the vehicle. Fuck! Nick Fury frowned, turned off the car engine, and looked at Mara who was blocking the car. 2 hours later. Padwick Farm. Peter was talking on the phone with Jonathan, and suddenly the sound of a car engine was heard in the yard. Looking back, Peter found that Clark and Nick Fury had rushed back. After talking to Jonathan for a few more words, Peter hung up the phone and walked to the window. Stroking his beard, he turned his thoughts to the fishman incident. These monsters attacked humans. Could it be that something went wrong with the ocean? Thinking about the ocean, Peter saw Mara getting out of the car. He was slightly stunned. I asked Clark and Nick Fury to go to Beach Rock Town to investigate, but you two turned around and came back. Chapter 268, Azu's ambition is to hope that his father will become the king of the sea. Mara got off the car and looked at the farm in front of her in surprise. She didn't expect that the two people would bring her to farm. Just now in Tanayan Town, she stopped two people who were about to steal the body of the fish man. Clark thought that the other party would fight with him, but he didn't expect Mara to say that she was also interested in the body of the fish man, and the two could divide the body equally. He had heard of dividing money and food equally, but it was the first time Clark heard of dividing the body equally. Do you have to cut a body in half with a knife? Clark, who thought the other party's request was too ridiculous, refused directly. Mara didn't expect Clark to agree, so she further proposed that she would go back with Clark and Nick Fury to study the body. Not only studying the body, she also became interested in Clark's abilities and background. I told you, kid, you can knock her out and stuff her directly into any trash can. Nick Fury got off the car and said to Clark with a serious expression and dissatisfaction, you don't know her identity, but you brought her to the farm. This is very dangerous, you know. Originally, Nick Fury suggested that Clark knock the other party out directly. But Clark did not listen to Nick Fury's advice, but chose to compromise and bring Mara back to the farm. I know, but I don't think she is a bad person, Clark said his thoughts. Bad people don't have it written on their faces. Mara, who was standing next to him, didn't notice the conversation between the two. She looked at the farm in front of her. I always feel that this place seems a little unusual. With a creak, the door of the house was pushed open, and Peter walked out of the living room. He was stunned for a moment, and cast his eyes on Clark. Clark, is this the guest you invited? Hearing Peter's words, Clark hurried over to introduce. Godfather, this is Mara Zebel. She is. Hesitating for a moment, he cast an inquiring look at Mara, and said to Peter at the same time, sorry, Godfather, I don't know where Miss Xavier is from. I'm from Boston. Mara chose to conceal her identity. At the same time, she became curious about Peter's identity and age. He seemed to be about the same age as her, but why could he be Clark's godfather? She knew Clark's strength. His eyes could spit out high concentration flames. He was extremely powerful, and he had lightning speed. I'm Peter Patrick. Peter's words interrupted her thoughts. Pretending not to know the woman in front of him, Peter stretched out his hand to shake her hand. While shaking hands with Mara, he cast his eyes on Clark next to him, wondering why the other party came to the farm. Is there a Sea King on his farm? Clark noticed Peter's eyes and realized that he might not have done something right. Coupled with what Nick Fury said to him along the way, he felt even more uneasy. 5 minutes later, Peter talked to Clark alone and learned the reason why Mara appeared on the farm. Sorry, Godfather, I shouldn't have taken the initiative to bring her back to the farm. After all, she is not an ordinary person. Clark apologized to Peter nervously. No need to apologize, Clark, I know you yearn for mermaids. Peter didn't care about this matter. He understood Clark's behavior. No, Godfather. Clark's face turned red, and he said to Peter a little embarrassedly, I have always liked Lana. Really? But haven't you heard of saying? Clark. First love is just a little stupidity plus a lot of curiosity. That does not represent love. Clark, why do I feel like the Godfather is cursing me? Peter said casually, patted Clark on the shoulder, and turned to walk towards the living room. Looking at Peter's back, Clark seemed to understand something, but it seemed that he didn't understand anything. Backyard storage room. The body of the fish man was placed on it. Clark, Nick Fury, and Mara stood by. Azu, Star-Lord, and Loki also came to join in the fun. Loki, who had been confined for a few days, can finally breathe fresh air. With a feeling of freedom, even the fishman in front of him became cute. Mara's proud figure quickly attracted his attention. This made Loki a little confused. He didn't come out for a few days, and there was a woman next to his father. Is this a daughter or a girlfriend? Loki fell into deep thought. Mara, who was standing at the outermost edge, didn't know Loki's criticism. At this time, she felt a little complicated. She didn't expect that Peter would have so many sons. Not only that, she just saw a guy with a shirtless body going to the bathroom. How many times has this guy been married? Otherwise, how could he have so many sons? No, the key point seems to be how old this guy was when he started having children. The shirtless guy obviously looked older than him. At this time, Mara also regarded the shirtless abandoned house Thor as Peter's son. He was shot in the head, and before that, his heart was also fatally injured. It was a puncture wound. Peter's voice interrupted Mara's fantasy. He stretched out his hand to pry open the fishman's teeth. After his fingers touched the mouth of the fishman's corpse, he pulled them out, wiped them with a tissue and said, the mucus secreted by this creature has a paralyzing effect. It must be very useful for hunting. After a simple inspection, he said to everyone, and the energy consumed by this creature should be very amazing. Peter had guessed that the creature in front of him was the Trench Clan from the Seven Ocean Kingdoms. He also had considerable attainments in biological knowledge. Since he had the corpse breeding ground, he often studied biological knowledge. After his physical fitness was fully enhanced by the watch, his memory and learning ability were also significantly enhanced. Peter looked at Mara. Ms. Zabel, do you really not know this creature? Facing Peter's sudden question, Mara was stunned for a moment. Just call me Mara. I don't know the specific information about this creature, really. Facing Mara's obvious lie, Peter nodded and did not continue to ask. Staring at the fish-man corpse in front of him, Peter paused for a moment and continued, maybe their food has run out, so they came ashore to look for food. Clark, you said you saw them cannibalizing each other. I think the most likely reason is that the food is running out. After listening to Peter's words, everyone fell silent. Mara didn't expect that Peter actually knew something about biology. But did the Trench tribe attack humans because of food shortage? Mara stared at the fish-man corpse lying on the table and fell into deep thought. After leaving the backyard storage room, Zhu called Peter, who was about to leave. Dad, what's the matter? Peter turned around and faced Zhu. After seeing that everyone else had left, Zhu walked over and whispered to Peter, who is that woman named Mara? Did she say she was from Boston? No, I don't believe it. Clark said that she can emit white light from her eyes and can also control the water to attack. In fact, she is from Atlantis, right? Zhu directly stated his guess. Peter's eyebrows moved, and he asked him in surprise, why do you think she is from Atlantis? Because according to legend, only people from Atlantis have such power. As he spoke, Zhu's eyes flashed with excitement, and he said excitedly, Dad, it is said that there are countless gold, silver, and jewelry there, and all kinds of treasures that humans can't imagine. If we find Atlantis, we will be rich. Are you short of money now? Peter asked him with a frown. Why is this kid suddenly interested in Atlantis? Zhu originally wanted to say that he was short of money, and all the money he had saved was borrowed by Thor. But when he thought that his father would ask him about the source of the huge fortune, he had to swallow what he wanted to say. One thing, but it's not the most important thing, Dad, Zhu told Peter his purpose. We can use the deep sea to find Atlantis and then occupy it. In this way, Dad, you will own an entire kingdom. You will be the Poseidon in the ocean. Zhu continued to urge Peter to occupy Atlantis. We can temporarily keep this woman named Mara and let her cooperate with the deep sea to find Atlantis. You have to understand one thing, John, Atlantis is not an unowned land. Peter looked at Zhu speechlessly. How come this kid speaks more and more like a villain? And are you sure that the guy in the deep sea can be the opponent of the Sea King in the sea? I'm not the person who likes to conquer as you think, so, Peter patted Zhu on the shoulder. Don't think about conquest and war. Dad is a peace-loving man. Me too, Dad. Zhu had a kind expression, and he said with his hands on his hips, I am a peacemaker like you, Dad. I saved a girl who jumped off a building the day before yesterday. What? Peter looked at him in surprise. When did it happen? You saved her. He remembered that in his previous life, Zhu once advised a girl not to jump off a building, but because he was in a bad mood, he directly forced her to jump off. Just the day before yesterday, near the Talon Club, I saved her, but when I caught her, I accidentally broke both of her arms. As he said that, Zhu exhaled and shook his head. I should have flown up instead of standing on the ground, so that she wouldn't have broken her bones. Peter, after coughing, he said to Zhu, very good, Zhu, you don't have to go to rescue people in the future, especially things like jumping off a building, just leave it to professionals. Chapter 269 Queen of the Sea, what kind of father are you? Smallville Town, Supermarket. Mara stayed at Peter's house temporarily because she wanted to study the fish-man corpse. After leaving the farm, she was going to the supermarket to buy some things. What should we do with the shelves? Mr. Rovner, the female staff of the supermarket asked the boss. Rovner. Wearing glasses and looking gentle, Rovner shrugged his shoulders and walked to the side of the female employee. The labels should face outwards, Hannah. Anyone with a little common sense knows that. Okay, sir. Hannah took a step back calmly. Her boss always wanted to get close to her and take advantage of her. You know what? Hannah, if you put on a little makeup, you should be very beautiful. Hannah took a few steps back and moved away from him. Please don't do that, sir. I said this kind of topic makes me very uncomfortable. Really? But I can make you feel more comfortable, Rovner said obscenely, and was about to reach out to Hannah, but was suddenly interrupted by a voice. Excuse me. Mara walked into the supermarket and stood in front of the candy shelf. Looking at the dazzling array of candies, her brows furrowed. I didn't expect there would be so many kinds. Mara stroked her chin with her right hand and fell into distress. The two who heard the voice looked at Mara. Looking at Mara's proud figure, especially the surging waves on her chest, Hannah fell into a daze. Is there anything I can help you with? After calming down, Hannah walked towards her. Unexpectedly, the boss who was attracted by her beauty walked in front of Mara before her. My name is Randy, and I am happy to serve you. Robner smiled and stretched out his hand to Mara, and said to Hannah, go back to your post. Hannah, Mara, who didn't notice anything unusual, nodded to Robner, looked at the candies on the shelf, and said, maybe you can recommend one to me. You are full of exotic charm. I have never seen such red hair. At some point, Robner pinched a strand of Mara's hair. Mr. Robner, you shouldn't. Seeing the boss harassing the female customer, Hannah wanted to stand up and stop him. Go back to your post, Hannah, I'm serving customers. After threatening Hannah, Robner turned his head and stared at Mara's proud figure, especially the surging waves on her chest. He couldn't bear to blink his eyes. What is this dress made of? It's so shiny. Where is the zipper? He showed a lewd smile on his face and wanted to reach out to Mara's clothes. Your hands are very dishonest. With a snap, Mara grabbed the other's wrist. Robner, who was pinched so hard that he screamed. Ow! Crack! Mara didn't say anything more and directly broke the other's wrist, then turned around and continued to look at the candy. The boss, who was convulsed with pain, fell to the ground and wailed wildly. Ronaf's screams quickly attracted the attention of other people in the supermarket. What happened? Is everyone okay? Oh, my God. Someone saw the supermarket owner's exaggeratedly broken wrist and covered his mouth with horror. My hand is broken. Yes, you deserve it, Mara said with a matter-of-fact expression. Seeing others looking at her with fear, Mara explained, this guy touched me. I warned him. This is already showing mercy. Hearing Mara's words, the whole supermarket immediately became a mess. A customer called the police, and soon the patrolling police nearby rushed to the scene. Don't move. Put your hands up. After learning about Mara's brutal behavior, the police immediately raised their guns. I don't like others to point fingers at me, and I don't like being pointed at by guns. Mara looked at the police in front of her, put down the candy unhappily, and waved forward casually, and the mineral water on the shelf fell to the ground with a bang. The water immediately gurgled out. Mara controlled the water to flow, and at the same time, white light appeared in her eyes. Put down the gun. Facing the powerful momentum shown by Mara and the strange water flow, the police immediately raised their guns nervously. Splash! The water flowed like a water spirit, sweeping towards the policeman's arm. The water flow hit his arm accurately, and the pistol held by the policeman fell to the ground with a pop. Seeing the strength shown by Mara, the other policemen were stunned for a few seconds. Soon the policemen reacted and all raised their guns to point at her. What's going on with these waters? They all obey my orders, Mara said to the policeman with a blank expression and white light flashing in her eyes. Don't move. If you move again, I will shoot. After hearing her explanation, the policeman became more nervous. The atmosphere became more and more tense. Just when the policeman almost couldn't help but shoot, the sound of clicking footsteps suddenly sounded behind them. Mara looked at Peter in surprise as he walked towards the crowd. This is not the ocean, Mara. Peter shook his head at Mara, and then said to the police, okay, officers, this is just a misunderstanding, you can leave. In Mara's surprised eyes, the police who heard Peter's words put away their guns and turned to walk out of the store. It seemed that the police had completely forgotten about themselves. Seeing the police leave, Mara put away the dancing water and asked Peter in shock, how did you do it? I have a good relationship with the police, so I can make them change their minds. Impossible. Mara didn't believe Peter's explanation. This is magic, right? She looked at Peter again with an unbelievable look. Are you a magician? This was the first time she saw such a human on land. No, I'm not a magician. Peter shook his head and said to Mara, let's go, otherwise you will be watched by more people next time. I just want to teach him a lesson. Seeing Peter was about to leave, Mara immediately followed him and said to him, actually, I wanted to surrender just now. Really? Peter was very skeptical about this. If you surrender, are you willing to go to jail? Peter opened the car door and let the other party get in. Mara sat in the passenger seat and said to him, in fact, I might escape from prison, because I still have to save people. Those who were captured by the fish man, maybe they are still alive. Do you know where they are? I know the approximate location, but I still need to investigate the specific location, Mara exhaled and said to Peter. As the car started, she sat in the passenger seat honestly and followed Peter to the farm. Back off. Back off. When the car drove near a street, Mara saw several police cars parked in front. In front of a house, a middle-aged man in a gray jacket was holding a girl hostage with a pistol. This is our family's business, it has nothing to do with you, the barefoot middle-aged man shouted at the police. The girl he held hostage seemed to be her daughter, begging constantly. Dad, don't, it's all your mother's fault, Rachel, I know what she is like, and you are the same as her. The middle-aged man gritted his teeth and shouted at his daughter who was held hostage. At the same time, he took his daughter back and threatened the police. Back off, hear me, or I will kill her. Seeing the scene in front of her, Mara immediately asked Peter to stop the car. Peter had to step on the brakes and give the stage to the other party. Bang! Before the car stopped, Mara rushed out. Moving in front of the suspect, she asked the middle-aged man with a cold face, "You killed your wife, who are you?" The middle-aged man looked at her in confusion. "I am Mara, the daughter of the sea." As she said that, white light shot out of her eyes. The startled middle-aged man stepped back. But he soon reacted with a mocking smile on his face. "Daughter of the sea? So what? We are on land now, silly woman." Mara shook her head and whispered in a voice that she could hear herself, "No, lack of water is not our weakness, it's yours." She reached out to the middle-aged man and activated her ability. "You are already feeling dry mouth now, the water in your body will be drawn out by me, and you will feel like you can't drink a drop of water for several hours." As she spoke, she continued to absorb the water from the other person's body. "Now, it feels like a whole day of lack of water. You will feel weak, dizzy, and muscle cramps." "Fuck you." The middle-aged man wanted to shoot, but he felt powerless all over, and all the symptoms the other party said came true. It's been 2 days now, the pulse is disordered, the vision is blurred, and the reaction is slow. Plop! The middle-aged man knelt on the ground, covering his throat and gasping for breath. 3 days. Just as Mara continued, the hell girl stopped her with tears. "Stop." Mara looked at the other person in surprise. "He killed your mother and tried to hurt you. Why did you help him?" "I don't want to save him, but I can't bear it," the girl cried and said. "He is still my father." Mara was stunned. After a long while, she walked back to the car silently. Peter glanced at the silent Mara, started the car, and said to her, "Are you discouraged?" "No, I just feel that humans are too complicated." Peter shook his head and said to her, "Humans are strong and weak, insightful and often blind. This is not complicated, but often contradictory, especially when it comes to emotions." Mara listened to Peter's words and thought of her father. Turning her head, she asked Peter, "What kind of father are you?" "Me." Peter thought for a while. "I don't know, maybe you can ask Azu and them." At the same time, Azu was flipping through the newspaper on the farm. Atlantis, looking at a column about Atlantis above, his eyes narrowed. "If I can get the deep sea. Thank you for your monthly tickets, and thank you readers. I will definitely make up for the chapters I owe. I bow 90 degrees. I hope everyone will smile often, and good luck will come naturally." Chapter 270, Loki's Fan, Thor's Wrath. Knock. 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 Azu knocked on Loki's door. In the room, Loki was lying on the bed, picking up the grapes on the table and putting them into his mouth while concentrating on the book in his hand. The name of the book, Asgard's Lament, was particularly eye-catching. Because he was too focused, he didn't notice the knock on the door for a while. The Asgard's Lament he was reading was a fan book about Loki. But it was not his fan book, but a fan book of Loki in the Marvel world. The author was an Asgardian. Asgardians have a strong artistic cell and are very keen on stage dramas and performances. So some bored Asgardians, based on the previous changes in Asgard, Odin's coma, Thor's expulsion, Hela's revenge, slightly processed the art and wrote a fan book with Loki as the protagonist. "It's ridiculous, I didn't even appear in it." Loki was quite dissatisfied that he didn't appear in the book. Sitting up from the bed, Loki suddenly had an idea in his mind. "I have read a lot of fanfiction books. Now I am considered a big shot on the industry. I can definitely write a fanfiction with myself as the protagonist. Tell the story of my adventures with my father in another world. At that time, I can also write and direct the play myself. As for the actors, they can be selected from the Asgardians. Thinking of this, Loki immediately sat in front of the computer and prepared to write the script. He had already thought of the name of the script, which was called The Tragedy of Patrick's Farm, the story of Loki. I should have some talent for stories. At this time, outside the door, Azu raised his head and put his hands on his hips, exhaled heavily, and wondered why this guy didn't open the door. Knock. 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 This time, he knocked on the door with much more force. Loki, who was inside the house, had just sat down when he was startled by the knock on the door that seemed to shake the whole room. He was in a bad mood and opened the door, and saw Azu, whose expression quickly changed from gloomy to sunny. Hey, Loki, good morning, John. Loki opened the door and let Azu in. I guess you must have run into some trouble, otherwise you wouldn't have knocked on my door. Actually, Azu pinched his waist and smiled even more brightly at Loki. I came to see if you were okay. You were put in solitary confinement before, and I was very worried. You care about me? Loki asked in surprise, and at the same time looked Azu up and down. Of course, Azu walked up and patted his shoulder. You are my brother. I have always cared about you very much. Last time in the Shield world, you pretended to be Odin and almost demolished Asgard to farm. My brother, you are the real hero, Loki. He always felt that Azu was being sarcastic to him. Thank you for the compliment. Loki looked at Azu, who seemed to be scheming something bad, with suspicion. What trouble have you caused? Is that right? He suspected that Azu had caused some trouble, and was afraid of being scolded by his father, so he came to him to find a solution. No, of course not. Zu shook his head and said, in fact, I'm quite mature now. He said that he was now a rational and mature adult. Loki, have you heard of Atlantis? Zu quickly turned the topic back on track and asked Loki about Atlantis. Loki put down the book in his hand and sat down on the shaking chair. Of course, the sunken ancient continent. Zu nodded and continued to ask. You said that Mara is an Atlantean. I don't know. After all, I'm not a fish that can breathe in the sea. Loki said indifferently, I'm not a freak that can communicate with fish. I know someone. Zeus stated his purpose. He is the master of the ocean and can move freely in the sea, but he is not from this world. If I want to bring him back, I must use the mysterious house and sandbags. Can you help me get the key to the mysterious house and sandbags from my father? Zeus finally showed his true colors and asked Loki to help him get the key and sandbags. Loki was stunned for a moment, then said to him, this is impossible. After the last incident, my father has hidden the key and the sandbag. You can't get it without his permission, and why are you interested in Atlantis? Facing Loki's questioning, Zeus did not hide it. He coughed and said to Loki, it is a place that humans have never touched. There are countless treasures hidden in it. Once we find Atlantis, we can give it to my father. Think about it, my father can become Poseidon. Listening to Zeus' explanation, Loki stroked his chin and fell into deep thought. Atlantis, it does sound more interesting than his Patrick Farm tragedy, the legend of Loki. Okay, Loki made a decision quickly. He stretched out his hand to Zeus. I wish our cooperation a success. He became very interested in Atlantis, that Zeus said. I will get the key and the sandbag, Loki said confidently. At noon, Peter drove Mara to the farm. As soon as the two entered the living room, they saw Loki sitting on the sofa. Loki transformed into a young man at this time, which made Mara stunned. She thought that there was a guest at the farm. Dad, Loki came up and said to Peter, regarding the fishman attack that Clark is investigating, can I recommend a suitable person to help you investigate? Peter was slightly stunned and asked him, who do you recommend? You know him, father. He can breathe with gels underwater, has strength far beyond ordinary people and extremely fast swimming speed, and can communicate with marine life to control them. When Mara heard Loki's words, she thought he was talking about Aquaman. Although she had never come into contact with Aquaman, she also knew his abilities. Are you talking about Aquaman? Mara asked Loki. But before she could finish, Loki interrupted her. Yes, I mean the deep sea. Hearing the name deep sea, Mara was completely stunned. Who is this? Why have I never heard of this name? Peter next to him did not notice Mara's expression. After hearing Loki's suggestion, his brows slightly frowned. You want to bring deep sea here? Yes, Dad. Loki stood up with a confident smile on his face. This is not a good idea, Loki. He is a fool, and once he comes here, all the marine life here may suffer. Deep sea's hobbies are quite wide-ranging. Any female creature in the ocean may be killed by him. Mara didn't know the deep meaning of Peter's words. She thought Peter was describing the other party's strength. This made her curious about Deep Sea's identity. But he is very useful, isn't he? Loki said to Peter, and he will never dare to betray you, Dad. Seeing that Peter was somewhat moved, Loki took the opportunity to say, I can go there. If you are worried, Dad, you can let John go with me. Listening to Loki's suggestion, Peter frowned. If you two go together, it would really be like letting a tiger go back to the mountain. I don't know what trouble you will cause. Let Thor go with you. Peter decided to send Thor to go to the Black Robe world with the two of them. Letting Thor act as a spy and spokesperson can also prevent the two naughty kids from causing trouble. Where's Thor? Peter looked around and found no trace of Thor. I'm here. Hearing Peter calling his name, Thor came down from upstairs with sleepy eyes. Sorry, I stayed up late last night and got up late. Peter frowned and looked down at his watch. The time was already pointing to 12 o'clock. This guy is really getting more and more outrageous. Not only does he not work, but he also sleeps until noon before getting up. Isn't this hiring a serf, but a big Buddha? Peter sighed and said to him, Thor, your stomach is already developing in a dangerous direction. Be careful that your mother won't recognize you next time you go home. I know, sorry, my daily routine has been a bit chaotic recently. Thor touched the beard growing on his face and apologized to Peter. Looking at this guy's abandoned temperament, Peter shook his head. The next second, he waved forward casually, and Thor's body hit the chair heavily. Using the rune, Peter pressed the other person on the chair. Thor, who was a little confused, had not yet reacted when his body was tied up by the rope made by Peter's rune. Thor, after Peter tied Thor up, he said to Loki, who was stunned beside him, Thor's hair and beard are a bit sloppy now. Loki, help him cut it. He can't go out in such a sloppy look. Hearing that he was asked to help cut Thor's hair, Loki immediately became interested. He picked up the scissors beside the desk and said to the tied Thor, okay, but Thor, you have to be careful, my hands may not be stable. Seeing Loki walking towards him with a malicious look on his face, Thor immediately struggled and threatened Loki fiercely, stop. I swear in the name of Odin's beard that you are not allowed to cut my hair, otherwise you will taste the wrath of Thor. This is the last warning. You know the consequences. But Loki was not moved at all and walked towards him step by step. Thor's face, which originally had a fierce expression, quickly turned into a pleading one, and his voice became weak. Please, Loki, don't touch my hair, please, you are my brother. Merritt, who was next to him, looked at the begging Thor, speechless. Is this your wrath of Thor? 2 hours later, Thor, Azu and Loki were sent to the Black Robe world by Peter. Thor, who was touching his slightly prickly hair, was a little depressed. Losing his hair made him very painful. You know, his idol when he was a child was the Valkyrie, and he hoped to be like them when he grew up. Now that he has no hair, his dream of being an idol has completely collapsed. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 271, The Motherland erects a statue, and the deep sea community dies. In the world of black robes, Shenhai, who was being sought by Azu and others, was standing in front of the mirror. He clenched his fists and pressed them against his chest, took a deep breath and looked at himself in the mirror. Yes, I am a member of the Super 7, I am a superhero, and I can cheer up again. After hinting to himself, he picked up an automatic barber knife and cut the thick long hair on his head. With a buzzing sound, the originally thick hair was quickly cut off. After cutting his hair, Shenhai touched the flat top of his head and looked at himself in the mirror with satisfaction. Yes, I can return to the Super 7, I can do it. At this time, Shenhai had been expelled from the Super 7 by Homelander. In order to cheer himself up again, he cut his long hair and kept short hair to show his determination. Touching his short hair, Shenhai walked into the living room, picked up the remote control and turned on the TV. Ever since Madeleine disappeared and Homelander let himself go at the Walter speech, Shenhai has been entangled in bad luck. First, his attempt to sexually harass Xingguang was exposed, making his reputation stinking overnight. Then he had a big fight with He Hatao and the company. Some small media even reported that he harassed He Hatao and got angry after being rejected. A series of negative news about Shenhai made him abandoned by Walter, and then he was directly fired from the company by Homelander. Shenhai was in a particularly bad mood. When he turned on the TV, he saw Xinguang's speech. There was also Homelander standing up for her. Looking at the large photo on the promotional billboard behind Xinguang, Shen Hei's mood became even worse. The photo was a group photo of Homelander and Xinguang. What made him angry was that this photo was clearly a group photo of himself, Homelander and Xinguang, but these bastards at Walter's company actually photoshopped him out. What made him feel outrageous was that this damn photo was not photoshopped cleanly. The hand on Xinguang's shoulder was his own. Damn it, incompetent and furious, Shen Hei could only sit on the sofa and sulk. Walter, these bastards. Muttering, he suddenly saw the octopus in the fish tank. Meanwhile, on the streets of New York, Thor looked at the cars coming and going on the street and asked Azu and Loki, "Is this the black robe world you mentioned?" While talking to the two, he looked around. Loki nodded, and suddenly glanced at a movie poster hanging on the wall of a nearby movie theater. The name of the poster caught his eye, Padraic Farm, Homelander. Looking at the poster in front of him, Loki fell into stagnation. Someone actually plagiarized his ideas. Looking down, he found that the leading actors were Homelander and Starlight, and he immediately understood. It must be the Homelander of this world who did it. Azu, who was standing next to Loki, also saw the movie poster. He felt that something had been stolen from him. So, at the strong request of Azu and Loki, the three of them went to the cinema to watch the movie together. The content of the movie almost broke Azu's defense. The black-robed Homelander directly changed his experience on the farm and put it into the movie. Loki, who was watching the movie, felt insulted. Why did he disappear? Logically, he should have a role on the farm. Did the Homelander ignore him? What a shit. Coming out of the cinema, Loki frowned and said to the two people, "There is no role for me in this." He was not on the fanfiction written by the Asgardians, and he was not in the movie shot by the black-robed Homelander. Is he really the kind of person who is easily ignored? Azu was also quite dissatisfied. The black-robed Homelander actually regarded his experience as his own, and even filmed it in the movie. I think it's good. Thor felt that the movie was very much to his taste. It looks like a touching movie about the relationship between father and son. He reminds me of my father, Thor said with emotion, and my brother, and the acting of Homelander in the play is very good. It seems that he has completely integrated into it. As he spoke, Thor suddenly looked at Azu in surprise. By the way, is that really you? You two look almost exactly the same. No, he is not me, he is just Homelander from another world line. Azu said to Thor unhappily, he is not me, and I am not him. I understand. Thor nodded and walked to a nearby cafe. At any time, the most important thing is not to be hungry. Let's eat something first. Looking at Thor's back, the two could only follow helplessly. Buttermilk pancakes, sausages, whole wheat toast, and a cinnamon bun on another separate plate. Loki looked at the food in front of Thor, frowned and said to him, "Aren't you afraid that you will eat too happily and cause your eyeballs to explode?" "Of course not," Thor said nonchalantly while eating, "because this is just my normal diet. If you have any other opinions, you can call the police." He still hated Loki for cutting his hair. Loki wanted to say something else, but the TV in the cafe turned on. The content being broadcast on TV quickly attracted the attention of Zu and the other two. The Homelander on TV was being interviewed by a TV program. Homelander, in fact, many people are very dissatisfied with the fact that you have built statues of your father everywhere, and think that you are mythifying your father. No, this is not a myth. Homelander shook his finger at the host and said, "We father and son have saved the world together. I wrote in my autobiography that we once fought against an alien parasite when we were young. That alien monster was extremely powerful. If it weren't for my father, the Earth would be completely finished." The black-robed Homelander directly plagiarized the alien parasite incident experienced by Zu and Clark. "I hope my father can get a little respect. You know, there have been some misunderstandings about my behavior recently, and there have been unfounded legal charges. I hope people will stop and think about the sacrifices we made for them. Maybe then they will be inspired to become some kind of hero who is useful to society with their own meager efforts." Homelander smiled and said to the host. The host nodded and continued to ask, "You erected statues of your father across the United States. Do you hope that future generations will remember him?" The black-robed Homelander took a deep breath and replied, "I hope his achievements will be remembered. But I have to say that when so many people are slandering you, it is difficult to imagine what kind of legacy you will leave behind. We must remember what Jesus, Gandhi and Dr. Martin Luther King went through, And remember how little they were valued in that era. They must have felt very angry, but now look at them, they have all become immortal legends. Host: what do you think of the possibility of Victoria Newman becoming the next vice president? Victoria is my friend. We have a special relationship. Although it is not an ambiguous relationship, I have seen her daughter's heartbeat speed up when she looks at Ryan. Homelander laughed and said, "She will kill me if I say that." The host nodded and continued to ask, "The last question, who do you admire?" The black-robed Homelander pointed his finger at the interviewer's face and said with an expression that, "You know me, without a doubt, it is my father. In my heart, he is a supreme being, looking down on all living beings and watching everyone." After listening to the interview with the black-robed Homelander, Azu suddenly felt his high blood pressure rising. This guy was completely plagiarizing his own experience, and he also did what he wanted to do. Not only did he erect statues of his father all over the United States, but he also made movies and books to promote his father saving the world. What on earth does this guy want to do? Because he lacked love since childhood, he went completely crazy after the last incident? He wanted to tell the world that he had a normal childhood? And he also portrayed his father as a god. Azu now feels that the Homelander in this world is not only lacking in love, paranoid, childish and stupid, but also a thoroughly vain guy. Obviously, they were all his, but this guy unscrupulously snatched them all. An angry Azu wanted to cause trouble for the other party, but was stopped by Loki. The claws of the octopus locked his body, and the smooth and delicate claws moved slowly in the dangerous place. "Oh my god. That's the feeling, you did a good job." Just as Shenhei was indulging in a state of glue, the door was pushed open with a bang. Azu, Loki and Thor walked in. Shenhei, whose lower body was coiled by the octopus, heard the sound of the door being pushed open, turned around, and met frankly with the three people with stunned expressions. "Thank you for the support of the readers. On the first day of the month, please vote for me. Bo. Happy National Day. I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday. In addition, I recommend a book. Hong Kong variety show starts from Kowloon Walled City, reborn in Hong Kong Island in 1977, and found that this is a world integrated by countless Hong Kong movies. If you are interested, please click the portal below. Chapter 272 How did I, an older bachelor, become a grandfather? The air fell into an eerie silence. What the hell are you doing? Azu looked at him in shock. Damn it. No, it's not what you think. This is a misunderstanding. Loki and Thor looked at each other, feeling that their three views had been hit hard. Neither of them expected this guy to be so perverted. No, I didn't do anything. Shenhei thought that Azu in front of him was a native of the Seven, and hurriedly explained in a panic, "It's sick. This octopus is sick. I'm giving it an injection." "You help it?" Thor said disgustedly. "How do you help it?" In short, this is a misunderstanding. Shenhei hurriedly tried to pull the octopus off in a hurry. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it." Seeing Shenhei's hectic movements, Loki, who was watching the fun, took out his mobile phone and recorded a video of Shenhei and the octopus. "I am now convinced that the people in the Super 7 are all mentally retarded guys." Azu resisted the urge to punch the other person in the face, his eyes glowing red. "Put away your damn octopus, or I'll burn it." "Sorry, I'll take it down right away." Shenhei hurriedly apologized while trying to pull off the octopus's claws. He finally pulled the octopus off. "I'm sorry, I'm really sorry." Shenhei, who was holding the octopus in his hand, raised his hand to apologize to Azu. But because he pulled too hard, he tore off the octopus's claws directly, and ink splattered out immediately. "Oh, no. No. No." Listening to the screams of the octopus, a sad look appeared on Shenhei's face. Holding the wailing octopus, Shenhei knelt on the ground all of a sudden. Loki and Thor looked at each other. For the first time, the two felt the malice of this world. Half an hour later, Shenhei finally finished cleaning up and adjusted his mood. "One question," Azu asked the frightened Shenhei, "what happened here after we left?" "Well, I don't really understand." Shenhei swallowed his saliva. Azu's tone became impatient. "I say, what did Homelander do after Madeline disappeared?" Shenhei realized at this time that the Azu in front of him was not the Homelander he knew. He teamed up with Victoria Newman to send Stan, Uncle Fried Chicken, to prison, and now he has complete control of Vought Company, and then I was expelled from Vought. Shenhei told what he knew about Vought and the black-robed Homelander. In addition, an organization called the Black Robe Squad seems to be dealing with him now. They seem to be a group of ordinary people. That's all I know. I swear, Shenhei swore that he was telling the truth. Azu glanced at him. Anything else? Also, Homelander erected statues all over the United States, promoted his relationship with his father, and published books and movies. Loki listened to Shenhei's words, and suddenly interrupted him and asked, "You want to rejoin the Super 7, right?" "No, of course not." Shenhei denied it immediately. "I have nothing to do with them anymore. I have drawn a line between me and Homelander." When Azu heard him say that, he glared at him. "Do you think you can lie to me?" "Fuck you." A swear word almost came out of his mouth, but Azu stopped immediately. How could he be led astray by Nick Fury and learn to say fuck you from him? Azu fell into deep reflection. Sorry, Shenhei didn't know what Azu was thinking, and apologized in a panic. "Yes, I was flustered." Shenhei took a deep breath and said to Azu and the others, "I really want to return to the 7. I know that no one cares about my real thoughts, but I want to fit in with them. Only in the 7 can I find my meaning." Shenhei sincerely told Azu and the other 2 that he wanted to join the 7. "We can help you go back." Loki said he could help him return to the 7. "Homelander's father is also my father. I can intercede for you in front of my father." Loki looked into his eyes and said, "As long as my father asks, I believe that our countrymen will be willing to recall you." "Really?" Hearing Loki say that he was willing to help him return to the 7, Deep Sea's expression immediately became excited. "Really? Man, it's great that you are willing to help me. You are a good person. Thank you." Deep Sea wanted to give Loki a hug, but he was pushed away by Loki. Deep Sea was not embarrassed to be pushed away, and still thanked Loki excitedly. "But, you have to do us a favor, Deep Sea." Deep Sea was stunned for a moment, then nodded. "Of course, man, I can do anything as long as you can let me return to the 7, even if I ask you to eat the octopus just now." "What?" Hearing Loki asking him to eat the octopus, Shenhei suddenly fell into a daze. Looking at Loki's serious expression, he swallowed his saliva. Just when he was about to say that he could do it, Loki waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Even if you are interested in eating, I am not interested in watching." The trio found Shenhei and successfully got him to agree to follow him back to the farm. After completing the task, Azu couldn't help but want to find trouble with the Homelander in this world. As the other party plagiarized his experience and ideas, Azu planned to collect copyright fees from the other party. At night, the black-robed Homelander fell from the sky and landed in front of a residential building. After tidying up his clothes, he went forward and knocked on the door. With a creaky sound, the door was pushed open. The woman who opened the door looked at the Homelander, who suddenly appeared, and let him in with some displeasure. The Homelander didn't care and asked the woman, "Where's Ryan?" "He's in the room." "It's so late, you shouldn't disturb him. He is my son. I have the right to see him. No matter what time it is, you should understand." The black-robed Homelander stared at her with a bad expression. "You should know your identity, Becca." The woman called Becca by Homelander's butcher's wife. She had a relationship with Homelander for some reason, and then she disappeared for many years, gave birth to a child and grew up under the control of Water Company and the Institute. Homelander only found out recently that he had a child. His wife's disappearance made Butcher always think that Becca was killed by Homelander and Water. No matter how wild his imagination was, he could not imagine that his wife gave Homelander a child and raised him up, making him completely live up to the name of cuckold. After a few unpleasant conversations with Becca, the black-robed Homelander took a deep breath, his tense face turned into a smile, and gently pushed open the door of his son Ryan. "Hey, Ryan, Dad." Ryan, who was lying on the desk doing his homework, saw Homelander appear and shouted in surprise. "Doing homework?" The black-robed Homelander walked up to him and touched his head. "Sorry, I haven't come to see you recently." "It's okay, I know Dad is very busy." Ryan put down the pen and said to his father, "I am indeed very busy. But I have time recently and can come to accompany you. Do you like going to the farm? I can take you horseback riding." Hearing that he was going to go horseback riding, Ryan immediately nodded excitedly. "I like it. My father used to accompany me to ride horses on the farm." The wide fields were a good experience, the Homelander said, taking out a photo frame and handing it to Ryan. "I have a gift for you, Ryan." "What?" Ryan took the photo frame from his father in surprise. The photo frame was a photo of Peter and Homelander. "This is a family photo of me and my father." Ryan looked at the photo frame and asked Homelander in surprise, "Is this Grandpa?" "Exactly the same as the statue." At this time, Peter didn't know that he, an older single man who had not yet married, had inexplicably become a grandfather. But, Dad, Ryan scratched his hair in confusion and asked him, why does Grandpa look younger than you? Ahem. Homelander coughed unnaturally and said, your grandpa is not an ordinary person. His lifespan is not comparable to ours, so, Grandpa is really a god. Oh, of course. Ryan put the photo frame on the table and asked Homelander excitedly, when can we see Grandpa? I want to learn this ability from him, soon. Although Homelander didn't know if he could see Peter again, he still whispered to comfort his son. On the other side, on a street far away from the mansion where the black-robed Homelander was, Zhu retracted his supervision. He captured the conversation between Homelander and his son just now. Originally, he wanted to settle accounts with the other party, but after seeing this scene, he changed his mind. Thinking of the nightmares he had had about himself in this world, his hatred for the other party was not so strong. Standing there and looking at the father and son for a while, Zhu turned and left with a complicated expression. The next day, Padrick Farm. Zhu, Thor and Loki brought Deep Sea back to the farm. Hello, Mr. Padrick. Shenhai shook hands with Peter excitedly. He knew the identity of the man in front of him. He was the father of his motherland. As long as the other party said a few words in front of his motherland, he could return to the Super 7. Looking at Zhu and others around Peter, Shenhai now wanted to ask if the other party still needed a son. If possible, he was willing to kneel down and acknowledge him as his father. Shenhai, who had a unique study of flattery, had completely lost his moral integrity at this time. Chapter 273 Grandpa's father is ordinary and great. Hello. Peter didn't notice the strange expressions of Zhu and the other two, and shook hands with Shenhai. You know me, right? Peter asked after looking at Shenhai, whose hairstyle had become a flat head. Yes, you are very famous. I mean, you are the greatest superhero in the world that I know. You are my idol, Shenhai said excitedly. I have always wanted to be a great hero like you. You are the kind of hero I want to be the most. Sorry, I am too excited. Oh my god, I need to take a breath. Faced with Shenhai's pursuit and flattery, Peter was silent. Doesn't this guy flatter people regardless of the occasion? What's the point of flattering in front of your own people on the farm? It is what you should do to create an atmosphere outside and flatter appropriately. Seeing that Peter didn't react, Shenhai lowered his head with a bit of embarrassment, and then he looked at Mara, who was dressed very similarly to him, and greeted her enthusiastically. Looking at Shenhai in a green fish scale uniform, and then looking at her own scale uniform similar to the other party, Mara fell into deep thought. Is this guy who looks a bit wretched really the Sea Lord that Peter mentioned? She doubted whether his thin body could withstand her punch. Mara frowned and compared him with Arthur Curry, and found that this guy was completely inferior in both appearance and temperament. Mara, seeing Shenhai take the initiative to shake hands with her, Mara pulled her thoughts back, hesitated for a moment and did not extend her hand, but just reported her name to the other party. We look like the same kind of people. Can you talk to fish? Shenhai coughed lightly, and withdrew his hand in the air with some embarrassment, looking at Mara and asked her. Shenhai was quite excited to see his kind. No, I can't talk to fish. Mara shook her head, but I know a guy who can talk to fish. Really? Then maybe we can communicate. Of course, I am willing to communicate with you. Shenhai came up and was attracted by Mara's temperament. In his eyes, the other party was like a mermaid exuding fatal temptation. Shenhai, who has a mysterious fascination with fish creatures, really wants to have an in-depth exchange with Mara. Thank you, I'm not interested. Mara rejected Shenhai without any hesitation. The first impression she had of him was not bad, but very bad. Although he was handsome, he had a vulgar temperament, which made her very uncomfortable. At night, Shenhai, who had just arrived, looked at the dinner prepared by Peter's family with shock. He didn't expect that all the food prepared on the table was seafood. Lobster, sea fish, oysters, and grilled octopus were all placed on the table. Looking at the same kind of marine creatures on the table, Shenhai took a deep breath. Why? Don't you like it? Nick Fury, who was in charge of dinner, frowned and asked him. Loki and the others said that you like this taste. When Nick Fury was making dinner, Loki, who was deliberately playing a prank, suggested that he make a full seafood dinner. Nick Fury himself suddenly wanted to eat seafood, so he made a seafood feast attentively. No, I'm fine. Deep Sea tried to calm his breathing, resisting the feeling of nausea and vomiting, and set on pins and needles. After forcing a smile to Peter, he stiffly picked up the knife and fork. Watching everyone enjoying the delicious seafood, Deep Sea, who had been pretending for a while, finally couldn't help but ask Nick Fury, "Sir, can you give me a bread?" "No. No bread," Loki said to Deep Sea, "only seafood." As he said that, he specially carried a plate and walked to Deep Sea and put it down. "This is specially prepared for you. I think you must be very interested." In order to retaliate against Deep Sea for polluting his eyes, the petty Loki specially placed a plate of grilled octopus in front of him. Looking at the cooked octopus, Deep Sea immediately covered his mouth and groaned. "Are you okay?" Deep Sea, Clark, who didn't know the situation, asked him. "No, I'm fine." Deep Sea tried to suppress the churning in his stomach, forced a smile, and said to Clark. Loki, seeing that Deep Sea had a look of doubting his life after being teased by Loki, Peter stopped him from doing the next move. He was afraid that after being forced to eat the grilled octopus, Deep Sea would not be able to hold back and vomit the contents of his stomach. In this way, the whole dinner would be messed up by him. Peter said to Loki, "Go get a piece of bread for Deep Sea." Although Loki felt a little regretful that he could not see Deep Sea eating the octopus with his own eyes, Peter had spoken, so he had to stop his pranks and get a piece of bread for Deep Sea. "Thank you." Seeing that Peter had helped him out, Deep Sea thanked Peter with great gratitude. At this moment, he felt that Peter was emitting a dazzling light all over his body. "Are you swimming fast in the sea?" Star-Lord didn't know that Loki had just teased Deep Sea, and he thought that Deep Sea simply didn't like to eat seafood. Curious, he asked about Deep Sea's situation. "Yes, faster than the Olympic champion," Deep Sea coughed. "Olympic champions are nothing. Think about it, some fish swim faster than them. The black marlin can reach a maximum speed of 80 miles per hour, I know this very well, because I have a black marlin friend named Crazy Brother. He is super crazy. When he gets crazy, his speed can even exceed 80 miles. Deep Sea talked endlessly about his crazy buddy. Star-Lord nodded. "So you think your crazy buddy is the world champion?" "No, I just think it's a bit unfair. Not only did Crazy Brother not get any reward, but he was also made into lemon charcoal. No one remembers him." Star-Lord, he felt that he shouldn't be so rude. Deep Sea's friend's hell joke made him feel guilty about eating fish now. Seeing the strange looks that Mara and others cast on him, Deep Sea immediately realized that he was talking too much. After coughing, Deep Sea immediately lowered his head and ate bread guiltily. Late at night, Peter was reading the autobiography novel that Deep Sea gave him in his room. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. "Come in." With a creak, the door was pushed open. Putting down the book, Peter looked at Azu, who pushed the door open. "Is there something wrong?" "John, no, nothing. I just want to talk to you, Dad." Azu said that he just wanted to chat during the long night. "I think you must have something on your mind, John." As he said that, Peter stood up and poured a glass of water and handed it to Azu. "Let me guess, you must have seen something in the black robe world, or you have some feelings, right?" "Yes, Dad." Azu knew that his father could always guess his thoughts. He took the glass of water from Peter. "I originally wanted to fix the me in another world, but I saw the scene where he communicated with his son. And I suddenly felt that all my anger and prejudice were meaningless." Azu told Peter what he saw, the scene of the black-robed native communicating with his son. "He has always been like me, lacking a sense of security. The difference is that I can have the company of my father, but he has no one to accompany him. His bad character is not his fault alone. The dreams I had were all his painful experiences. Because of what happened to him, I don't want a similar tragedy to happen to my son. In fact, he is just a poor guy who is trapped in his childhood and can't get out of it for the rest of his life." Azu looked into Peter's eyes and said to him, "At that moment, I suddenly understood and no longer felt disgust and hatred for him." "Dad." Peter listened to Azu's story for a while, then patted his shoulder. "This shows that you have grown up, John. The most difficult thing for humans to do is to recognize themselves and others, especially to recognize themselves." He was somewhat relieved. For so long, Azu has been troubled by the experience of another self in his dreams. Now Azu has completely reconciled with himself and is no longer tormented by the spiritual dilemma. This is a big step for Azu to mature. "I know, if there is no father, I think I might become the same as him, or even worse than him," Azu said. He raised his head and said to Peter, "Thank you, Dad." "Smelly boy, do we still need to say thank you to each other?" Peter chuckled and ruffled Zu's hair. "There is another question." Zu smiled at Peter and asked, "Dad, why do you always say that you are a human, not a god?" He thought of the deification movement of the Black Robe Homelander. If his father knew, he would definitely order all the statues to be removed. Because I am not perfect, Peter was silent for a moment and said to Zhu, do you know why Thor changed from the god of thunder to Shudin, indulging in beer and games? Zhu shook his head. I don't know. He wanted to say that Thor was probably a person who easily let himself go, but he still held back and didn't say it. Because his thinking has undergone a huge change. Thor always thought that his father Odin was upright, but with the revelations of the goddess of death Hela, he discovered his father's brutal and militaristic past. His father's image was destroyed, causing his spiritual world to suffer disillusionment, so he chose to exile himself. Peter cast his gaze toward the dark night outside and continued, now Thor just can't reconcile with the past. He is trapped in the life his father created for him and can never get out of it. He can't accept that his father is such a person. The same goes for you and Star-Lord. If you think I'm a perfect god, then you will be disappointed to find in the end that I'm just an ordinary person. I will make mistakes, and I will be selfish, Dad. Azu didn't expect Peter to say that. He was stunned for a moment, then said, no, Dad, you have always been ordinary and great in my heart. Chapter 274, Azu's Self-Reconciliation, Dialogue between Father and Son. Really? But one day, the image of me in your heart will change. This is inevitable, John, because you are all extraordinary ordinary people. Peter was very open-minded about this. He said to Azu with a calm expression. Not ordinary people, Azu asked in confusion. What do you mean? Don't you want to be superheroes? Peter picked up the coffee cup on the table and tasted the bitter coffee. Most superheroes are trapped in the relationship between father and son and are constantly struggling. Azu listened to Peter's words and couldn't help asking in confusion. Why, Dad? Most of the so-called heroes have been trapped in the life process compiled by their fathers for a long time, and it is difficult to really get out of it. This may be why there are so many superheroes. Rather than mature and healthy individuals, it is better to say that they are children struggling with psychological problems. When the father is still there, they are willful and dependent. When the father is not there, they stumble and want to inherit or resist the father's power and laws, but in the end they find that everything is the same as before, and there are only superheroes' self-imagination of self-trauma, Peter said and looked at Azu. John, do you know why Bruce embarked on the path of Batman? Azu thought for a while, hesitated and said, is it because he wants to inherit his father's will? For Bruce, his father's death allowed him to inherit and rebuild his father's power and laws. For him, rebuilding laws and order is to stop those rampant criminals. After thinking for a moment, Peter said with a serious expression, what I hope, John, is that your life will not leave you with huge trauma because of me. Whether you want to overthrow me or rebuild my order, I hope that this feeling will not be the main reason for your struggle in life. So, I don't want to be a god, nor do I want your life to be entangled because of me. I hope you can always get rid of me and walk on your own path. Peter told Azu what he really thought in his heart. This is what I really expect. You walk your own way, not to inherit or resist me, but to surpass me and have a broader life than me. The farm is just a proof of my existence. You can inherit it, John, but I hope more than that for you. I hope you will not only inherit the farm, but continue to walk a greater path here, Dad. After listening to Peter's words, Azu couldn't speak for a long time. He suddenly realized that he had never really understood his father's intentions for so long. Taking a deep breath, he said to Peter, no matter what, Dad, no matter how Star-Lord and Clark see you, or what changes will happen in the future, I will never change. I swear, Dad, I will grow up to be the kind of person you expect. Peter nodded. Of course, I believe you. You are the head of the family. You are more mature than Star-Lord and Loki, and you know your responsibilities. He looked at the clock on the wall, and the time pointed to 11 o'clock. Well, it's getting late. Go to bed early. Standing up, Peter took the water cup from Zhu and motioned him to go to bed. Okay, good night, Father. Zhu took a deep breath and stood up, saying goodbye to Peter. Walking to the corridor, looking at the ray of moonlight shining through the window, Zhu's mood has become obviously different from before. Back in his room, Zhu lay on the bed, thinking about Peter's words. He suddenly remembered a movie he had watched. Blue Velvet. In the past, he still didn't quite understand this movie. But now he suddenly understood. The direct cause of the series of bizarre and perverted events that follow this film is probably explained in the first scene of the film. On a normal day, the father who was watering the lawn suddenly had a heart attack and collapsed. His father's illness caused his son Jeffrey to return home to take care of him, and he was gradually controlled by the turbulent town. Jeffrey needs to rebuild his father's image and his father's order. Only in this way can he save himself. Jeffrey in the movie is what his father said about inheriting his father's power and law, but the final ending is just a compensation for self-trauma and can't change anything. Getting up from the bed, Azu stood in front of the window and made a decision in his heart. What he has to do is not only to inherit the farm, but to stand on his father's shoulders and move forward. The next day, early in the morning, Peter just went downstairs and saw Saul holding a mobile phone in his hand and arguing with someone. After Saul, who was spitting, hung up the phone, Peter walked up and asked him, "What happened?" "Nothing, just a personal grudge between me and the bastard who played games." Saul said that he was spitting with his teammates who played games. Glancing at Thor's belly, Peter shook his head helplessly and said to him, "Don't tell me you're going to fly to his house and shove his arm up his ass." "No, of course not. I'm just warning her not to talk nonsense. She said she's not an ordinary person and can find me somewhere to beat me up. You know, sir, I'll definitely fight back. So I asked her to give me her phone number and we'll have an offline fight." "A fight?" Peter looked at him in surprise. "You want to PK with someone offline?" Thor patted his belly and said to Peter confidently, "Yes, I'll let her know the consequences of provoking me and let her know what Thor's wrath is." "I've seen what your Thor's wrath is." Peter shook his head and said to him, "Okay, I won't stop you from PKing with someone offline, but there's one thing, don't beat someone to death or paralyze him, and control your temper." "Of course, I'm not a vicious guy." Peter ignored him and continued, "Also, finish the work on the farm before the fight. Nick Fury broke the tractor yesterday. Go and fix it first." "No problem." Thor stood up and walked towards the courtyard. "I've always been good at riding horses. I used to nail horseshoes in Asgard. Repairing this kind of means of transportation is no problem for me." Peter narrowed his eyes slightly as he watched Thor walk towards the backyard. This guy is also a restless person. It seems that he has to send this guy back as soon as possible. However, this guy owes him money, and he has to ask Odin to pay it back. What should he take from Odin's treasure house this time? Peter fell into deep thought. Ding. Ding. The sound of people coming down the stairs sounded. Peter shifted his sight from Thor to the living room and saw the Deep Sea downstairs. Seeing this guy appear, Peter immediately remembered the mission to find Atlantis. "Deep Sea," Peter called him and asked him, "Has Clark introduced you to the things in Beach Rock?" Deep Sea nodded and said, "Yes, I already know, sir." "Very good, we will set off now. Do you have any questions?" "No." Deep Sea walked downstairs to Peter. "Believe me, sir. There is nothing under the sea that I can't handle. I can help you find a needle." Peter looked at the confident Deep Sea and said to him, "There is a rule, don't mess with fish." "Well, of course not. I have never done such a thing." Deep Sea's face became a little embarrassed, and then he swore to Peter solemnly. Peter glanced at this guy and was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He called Mara to drive to Beach Rock together. At the same time, Port of Sheen. Aquaman Arthur Curry walked into a restaurant. "Cindy, the oysters for table number 5 have not been served yet. Joey is in charge of table number 5. I am taking a break now," the waiter Cindy shouted to the boss weakly. With a creak, the door suddenly opened. A burly figure entered the restaurant. The guests who were eating were all stunned when they saw this familiar figure, and then they began to discuss in a low voice. "It's really him, right?" "Yes, it is said that this guy is extremely strong, can swim in the water like a torpedo, and can even talk to fish. But why is he here? We are a seafood restaurant, and he makes us feel guilty. What should we do?" The guests and waiters saw the arrival of Arthur, the keeper of the nearby lighthouse, and discussed his purpose with some fear, worrying whether he came to the seafood restaurant to avenge the fish. The boss was also afraid of Arthur. He swallowed his saliva and said to the waitress Cindy, "Go and see what he wants." Cindy, okay. Although she was a little scared, Cindy still walked over tremblingly. "Excuse me, what do you need?" Arthur raised his head and replied to her, "Fish and chips." Hearing the food that Aquaman ordered, a customer next to him boldly said to him, "You can't order fish and chips." "Why?" "Because they say you can talk to fish." Arthur said to him with a cold face, "No, I don't talk to fish." Although he looked big and looked like he didn't want to be approached by strangers, Aquaman was still easy to talk to and didn't get angry directly. "But everyone around here says so. Fish can't talk. Their brain structure is too simple and they can't communicate at all." Seeing that Aquaman was willing to explain to him, The customer became bolder and continued to ask, "Then how did you do it?" "I used telepathy to sneak into their brains and force them to help me. This is the case with squids, sharks, and eels, but dolphins are another matter." After Arthur finished speaking, he said to the other party with a cold face, "Are you done asking? I still need to eat. Don't bother me if you have nothing to do." After the unhappy customer left, Arthur looked at the sea outside. After dinner, Arthur needed to go to Tanayan Town, where he heard the news that fishmen appeared and attacked humans. Chapter 275 Great Love Deep Sea Quotes. In the speeding car, Peter sat in the driver's seat, Mara sat in the passenger seat, and Deep Sea, who was sitting in the back seat, was announcing World Octopus Day to the two. On October 8th, we will take time to celebrate a majestic eight-legged mollusk. This is World Octopus Day. We have established a Timothy Foundation, named after my friend. Mara frowned and looked at Deep Sea. Why have I never heard of this World Octopus Day? Because, Deep Sea originally wanted to tell the other party that he came from another world. But when he thought of Loki's warning not to leak this information, he had to change his words and said, "This is what I proposed recently. Unfortunately, my friend Timothy, she passed away this year." Deep Sea made a sad expression. "I will miss her forever." Peter heard what Deep Sea said and looked back at him. This guy gave him a wretched impression anyway. Even if the other party looked affectionate now. In order to relieve the boring journey, Peter said to Deep Sea, "Deep Sea, why don't you tell us your nonsense philosophy?" Mara asked in confusion, "What nonsense philosophy?" "Ahem, I wrote a book called Deep Sea Meditations, which contains some of my philosophical quotes." Deep Sea smiled and said to Mara. Mara said curiously, "You can show us." "Of course." Deep Sea took a deep breath, put on a look of concentrating on thinking, and said Deep Sea's quote, "If you throw a piece of tea into the sea will become a very light tea." After saying the quote, Deep Sea changed the angle and posed handsomely. "Mara, what kind of philosophical quote is this?" "I also said that if you throw an egg into the sea will become an egg soup." Not noticing Mara's expression, Deep Sea continued to say his own quotes. "It's hard to believe that 10 years ago was still 10 years ago, Mara." Deep Sea changed his posture and continued, "My motto for mental health is, truth, detection, true eyes." Homonymous pun. Peter turned to him and said, "This is a good quote, Deep Sea. I give you 10 points." Deep Sea, who was encouraged, became more excited. He continued his philosophical quotes. "For many years, we watched TV, but now, TV is watching us." Mara, enough. She had enough of Deep Sea's nonsense quotes. Could it be that this bastard has been in the sea for a long time, so his brain is full of water? Deep Sea immediately stopped repeating his quotes after being scolded by Mara. He smiled at Mara awkwardly and said, "Sorry, if you are not satisfied, I have more wonderful quotes. These are all written by me personally, and they are definitely not written by ghostwriters." No, I don't want to hear any of your quotes." Mara was about to be broken by him. Okay. Being rejected by Mara, Deep suddenly became depressed. Peter saw that Deep was wilting like an eggplant after being beaten. In order to prevent him from being negative and slacking because of his emotions, he asked him, "Deep, I heard that you joined a cult." "Cult?" "No, sir, I have already quit. They promised me to join the 7. In fact, I don't believe in that thing. It was just a stopgap measure for me." Deep explained to Peter with an awkward expression, "I am a victim. I can let you return to the 7. Deep, Peter made a promise to him, "As long as you do what I say." Hearing Peter's promise to let him return to the 7, Deep's eyes widened instantly. "Really? Sir, of course. Oh, my God. This sounds incredible. I mean, you helped me a lot, sir. This is the best news I've heard recently. You are my hero." Shenhei was so excited that he said incoherently, "You are just like my second parents. Can I call you father?" "Shut up." Peter stopped his increasingly abstract behavior and stared at him with an unfriendly look. "If you talk nonsense again, I don't mind throwing you out of the car." Shenhei immediately became honest after hearing Peter's threat. Tanayan Town. Shenhei got out of the car and walked into the town. He saw people around him, and they cast strange eyes at him from time to time. Seeing the young girl pointing at him, Shenhei smiled and greeted the other party. As a result, the other party saw him saying hello and immediately ran away shyly. Shenhei thought that his charm conquered the other party, and said to Peter, "It seems that I am unexpectedly popular here." Peter was about to speak when his mobile phone rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a text message sent to him by Clark. Clark said in a text message that an obscene video about the deep sea was going viral on the internet. Curious Peter asked Clark to send the video. When he received the video link sent by Clark and opened it, he was slightly stunned when he saw the title of the video. The title of the video, In-Depth Communication Between Aquaman and Octopus, caught his eye. When he opened the video, he found that it was the face and lower body of the deep sea, with an octopus coiled around his lower body. When the deep sea, who was doing bad things, found someone coming in, he immediately pulled the octopus off his body in a hurry. The content of the video was quite explosive, and the title made Peter speechless. I don't know who came up with such a title, naming the deep sea Aquaman. In this way, Aquaman can't wash himself clean even if he jumps into the Yellow River? In the future, if Aquaman walks in the rivers and lakes and names himself Aquaman, the story of his in-depth communication with the octopus will probably follow him all the time. And the deep sea. Peter turned his eyes to the deep sea, who knew nothing about it. This guy is really good at playing. At the same time, Sea King Arthur Curry also rushed to Tanayan Town. At this time, Sea King had not yet become the Lord of Atlantis. After being adopted by the gentle manager who guarded the lighthouse, he completely integrated into human life. Arthur's natural characteristics enable him to survive in the sea and communicate with all marine creatures. Long-term marine life allows him to move freely in the water flow resistance of the seabed and the strong water pressure of the deep sea, and also gives him strength and endurance beyond ordinary people on land. After his adoptive father passed away last month, Arthur lived alone. After hearing about the incident of fishmen attacking humans in Tanayan Town, he came to investigate. Wearing the fish scale uniform stripped from the Atlantean who attacked him before, Arthur came ashore from the sea. After going ashore, he found that the people in the town looked at him strangely. Thinking that the other party was surprised by his green fish scale uniform, Arthur didn't care. He had seen similar looks countless times. Ever since he helped people in need under the name of Aquaman, he got used to this kind of gaze. "Excuse me, are you Aquaman?" Just as he was thinking about it, a girl came up boldly and asked his name. Yes. Arthur was a little surprised. He had only used the name Aquaman in his hometown of Sheenport. Could it be that he was so famous? Arthur, who was a little proud, admitted that he was Aquaman. Hearing Arthur admit that he was Aquaman, several girls immediately laughed. Arthur, any questions? Arthur suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Seeing that Arthur didn't look like a bad guy, several girls handed him their phones. Watching the video of the in-depth communication between the deep sea and the octopus, especially the Aquaman in the title, Arthur's face suddenly turned red. Who is this wretched and shameless bastard? Arthur, who felt that his name Aquaman was polluted, was instantly furious. Fuck, Arthur, who couldn't help but burst out with swear words, completely hated the deep sea. No wonder these people looked at him so strangely and called him Fuckfish Man. It turned out that they thought he and the fish were in a bad mood. Even though he had a good temper, Arthur was completely defeated. This bastard, he would never forgive him. Plop, Shenhei jumped into the sea from the pier of Tanayan Town and began to check the situation underwater. At this time, he didn't know that the censored video of himself and the octopus had gone viral on the internet. And a guy named Aquaman was looking for him to settle accounts. Shenhei dived into the sea. His vision was blocked in the turbid sea water. He was about to control the nearby fish to help him search, but he didn't expect that these fish seemed to be out of control. Realizing that something was wrong, Shenhei immediately dived up and shouted to Peter and Mara, "There are some problems. These fish seem to be out of my control." Walking ashore, he said to Peter, "Sir, there should be a guy who can control the fish here. I can feel him." Before he finished speaking, he felt a momentum in the sea rushing towards this side. Then, in the astonished eyes of Shenhei, Arthur jumped out of the sea with a bang. Arthur jumped to the shore and saw Deep Sea staring at him blankly. He immediately recognized that Deep Sea was the guy who was communicating with the octopus in the video. Very good, Arthur was determined to teach Deep Sea a lesson, regardless of the two strangers, Peter and Mara, who were right next to him. Bang! Arthur moved quickly and directly knocked Deep Sea out. My Jills, covering his chest with a painful gill, Deep Sea looked at the guy who attacked him angrily. Fuck! Deep Sea cursed at the other party and rushed towards him. Pressing against Arthur's waist, Deep Sea knocked the other party into the sea heavily. Boom! A dull roar sounded on the sea surface, and seawater splashed out. After Deep Sea knocked the other party into the sea, he was about to use his ability in the sea. But he didn't expect that the other party was more comfortable than him, and whoosh swam over and knocked him back with a punch. After the shocked deep sea reacted, he immediately swam back and called a nearby shark at the same time. When fighting in the sea, he always likes to call his good friends to join in the fight. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.